The Sorcerer, The Path to Transcendence starting from Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 326 is coming soon. The three admirals launched a combined attack, and even a formidable figure like Whitebird was gradually forced back by the ferocious onslaught. Akainu now attacked Whitebird with all his might, his fists brimming with magma power hurling themselves at him again and again, each strike packing immense power. Sengoku and Garp, exhausted after battling Whitebird for so long, exchanged a glance and, in unison, retreated. Their decision to withdraw stemmed not only from physical considerations but also from another underlying motive. They had already considered retiring, believing that the future of the Navy would ultimately fall into the hands of the younger generation. Therefore, the feat of killing Whitebird should be left to the younger generation, allowing them to establish themselves and build their prestige within the Navy. After all, if Sengoku withdrew, the position of Grand Admiral would be split between Akainu and Aokiji. Whoever could kill Whitebird in this battle would undoubtedly have a greater advantage in the competition for the Grand Admiral position. Kizaru, who had never dreamed of becoming a Grand Admiral, saw this situation and simply withdrew from the battle, handing this arena, fraught with both opportunity and danger, to Akainu and Aokiji, while he stood aside as a spectator. Gulila, you want to use my life as a stepping stone? Do you have the strength to do that? Whitebird observed the actions of the Marines before him, knowing full well what they were planning. He laughed heartily, his laughter tinged with both heroism and disdain. He knew the Marines would not let him off easily, and that today was likely a dangerous day, but he would not simply accept his fate. Given that, if he could take an admiral with him before his death, it would be a reward. At least it would inflict considerable damage on the Marines and give his battle a significant conclusion. Whitebird clenched his naginata, his gaze fixed on Akainu, who continued to attack him. Air shock, Whitebird unleashed a powerful punch with all his might. Instantly, the air seemed to explode, unleashing an immense shockwave that swept directly towards Aokiji and Akainu. They felt a surge of overwhelming force, unable to resist. They retreated, trying to gain distance and avoid the ferocious onslaught. Whitebird wasn't about to give up. He clutched the air with both hands, as if grasping everything around him. Then, he roared once again, a deafening roar. "Bury me, Marine Headquarters." With this roar, the entire world seemed to be turned upside down, shaking violently. Then, a shocking scene unfolded. Marineford, a place steeped in the rich history of the Navy and held sacred by all, was neatly split in two by Whitebird's terrifying power. The imposing structure crumbled instantly, smoke and dust billowing into the air. Everywhere was filled with falling bricks and stones, the sounds of people shouting, and the scene was a scene of chaos, akin to the end of the world. How could this happen? Many Marines, their eyes welling with tears of grief, watched the devastating scene unfold before them. Their high morale plummeted. They had never imagined that the sacred place they cherished would be destroyed in such a way. For a moment, they were at a loss, lost in sorrow and shock. Come on. Destroyed, so what? Seeing this, Zanguo was distraught. His eyes widened as he roared, trying to rouse the depressed Marines. As long as we have you, Marineford can be rebuilt. His voice echoed across the battlefield, brimming with strength and determination. Encouraged by Zanguo's words, the Marines' flagging morale began to recover. A fire reignited within each of them, their eyes brimming with fighting spirit. They gripped their weapons tightly, ready to continue the battle, fighting for the glory of the Navy and for the reconstruction of Marineford. Elsewhere, Akainu saw Whitebird seeming to be exhausted after unleashing his powerful attack. Seeing this as a golden opportunity, he attacked without hesitation. Fire breath, his arm instantly transformed into blazing magma, unleashing a torrent of molten lava towards Whitebird. The magma was so intensely hot that it instantly melted the ground wherever it touched. Not to be outdone, Aokiji quickly elementalized his hand. The shimmering ice element, brimming with domineering aura, combined with the power of his iron fist inherited from Garp, unleashed his most powerful attack. Ice Gauntlet, Aokiji launched a punch, carrying an extremely cold force that seemed to freeze everything in the world, towards Whitebird. Under this dual attack, even Whitebird, despite his formidable strength, found it difficult to withstand, and his defenses finally gave way. Seeing this, Akainu knew no chance would pass him by. Dog-gnawing Red Lotus, The lava transformed into a ferocious dog head and bit Whitebird's head fiercely. In an instant, half of Whitebird's head was scorched by the hot lava, leaving him severely injured and his body shaky. Whitebird's vision was blurry at this moment. With his head severely damaged, he could no longer maintain his observation haki, and his movements were inevitably slowed by a moment. Aokiji seized the opportunity. Burst pheasant mouth, Whitebird was unable to dodge and was completely frozen. Seeing Whitebird frozen, Akanu's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. He concentrated all his haki in his right fist and, with all his strength, punched Whitebird in the chest. The punch pierced Whitebird's chest, and blood gushed out instantly, staining the transparent ice red. Whitebird suffered such a severe blow that his life was like a candle in the wind, ready to be extinguished at any moment. Well done, Lava Boy. Despite suffering such a severe blow, Whitebird still had the energy to praise his opponent. His tone, though a touch weak, still radiated a sense of heroism and open-mindedness, as if the mortal wound before him was no big deal. HMPH, Akenu snorted coldly at this, his face filled with disdain. He was unwilling to accept praise from a pirate. In his eyes, pirates were heinous villains, inherently incompatible with the Navy. So, even though Whitebird was a renowned and powerful figure, he simply disdained to accept praise from his enemy. Chapter 327 Red Hair. What a monster, Aokiji exclaimed in amazement, watching Whitebird, his chest pierced yet still breathing. After all, a normal person suffering such a grievous wound would have died long ago, yet Whitebird remained stubbornly alive. His resilience was beyond imagination. Whitebird could clearly sense that he was already halfway to the grave, his life fading bit by bit, his consciousness beginning to blur. Memories of the past, like scenes from a movie, revolved in his mind. It was a revolving lantern. There were scenes of fierce battles against various enemies, and heartwarming moments with the Whitebird pirates, who were like family. Familiar faces flashed before his eyes. The last face to appear in his mind was Roger's, as if this old friend were calling him from the depths. One Piece. It's real, Whitebird suddenly roared with all his might. This roar was earth-shattering, causing the faces of the naval commanders present to change dramatically. Stop him! Watching the battle via Den Mushi from the Holy Land of Marijoa, the 5 elders were horrified upon hearing these words and hurriedly issued orders. They knew the weight of One Piece was immense. Whitebird's words would likely cause a global uproar, profoundly impacting the world order they controlled. Akainu was the first to react, attacking without hesitation. Gathering his haki once again, he charged at Whitebird, intent on silencing him immediately. Aokiji, Kizaru, and a host of vice admirals followed closely behind, charging at Whitebird with a barrage of attacks, intent on annihilating him before his message could reach any further. However, Whitebird no longer cared. He felt his message had been conveyed, and he no longer felt any regrets. What a long journey. My life has been wonderful, Whitebird muttered to himself, a satisfied smile on his face. Then, he slowly closed his eyes, and thus bravely died, ending a life filled with events and legends. His passing marked the end of an era, plunging the entire battlefield into solemn silence. Marines and pirates alike lamented the passing of this powerful warrior. Just as the Marines were about to advance to collect Whitebird's body, they were suddenly stopped by a strangely luminous curtain. Like a transparent wall, it appeared out of thin air, blocking them from the corpse, preventing any approach. What is this? The Marines looked at each other in confusion and astonishment. They had barely recovered from the shock of Whitebird's death when they were confronted by this inexplicable curtain of light, momentarily at a loss. At that moment, Weiss slowly appeared beside Whitebird's body, his expression calm. As the Marines saw Weiss appear, they trained their guns and cannons on him. The dark muzzles of their guns and cannons held a threatening threat, ready to unleash a fierce attack at the command of a single blow. But Weiss ignored them, standing silently. Then, before everyone's eyes, Whitebird's body vanished into thin air. Hand over Whitebird's body, Akainu, his eyes wide with rage, charged forward, blocking Weiss's path and shouting. He wouldn't stand by and watch Whitebird's body carried away. After all, Whitebird was a formidable enemy of the Marines, and his body held great symbolic significance. It must not fall into the hands of others. Get out of the way, Weiss replied coldly, his eyes devoid of any fear as he stared at Akainu. For a moment, the atmosphere became tense. The tension flaring at the slightest spark, a war imminent. Gudong fiery magma began to ooze out of Akainu's body, roiling and emitting bursts of sound. It seemed that he was about to attack Weiss. At this critical moment, a ship suddenly appeared in the harbor. Its tall hull and unique shape attracted everyone's attention, and the extremely tense atmosphere was slightly changed. "What is that?" a Marine couldn't help but ask. "The Redfurs. Why are the red hair pirates here?" Soon, someone recognized the ship and exclaimed in surprise. Red-haired Shanks stood at the bow, looking majestic. His second-in-command, Ben Beckman, and the pursuer Jesus were also on board. The red hair pirates were all present. "Red hair. What are you doing?" Sengoku frowned and shouted at Shanks. He was deeply worried. The Navy had already lost a large number of troops in the battle with the Whitebird pirates. If they fought the red hair pirates again at this time, they would undoubtedly suffer heavy losses. Even if they ultimately won, they would likely be unable to tame the turbulent seas. The pirates would then become even more reckless, and the entire world would spiral out of control. Red hair Shanks stood at the bow, surveying the devastated battlefield before him. He saw no sign of the rest of the Whitebird pirates, frowning slightly. "It looks like the war is over," he said. "Boss, that man looks like Wes Erwin," Jesus said to Shanks, recognizing Wes. The legendary alien. Shanks' interest piqued, and he said excitedly, "How about inviting him to a party?" His companions, already accustomed to Shanks's occasional eccentricities, simply smiled helplessly, unconcerned. "Let's get down to business," Beckman reminded him, not forgetting the purpose of their trip. Shanks regained his composure. The Red Fourth slowly approached the shore, and everyone disembarked. The moment they disembarked, a powerful, almost tangible, domineering aura emanated from Shanks. This aura, like a surging wave, swept across the surroundings. The Marines below the rank of Admiral could no longer withstand the overwhelming pressure, losing their fighting spirit and collapsing. In a moment, the battlefield was littered with fallen soldiers. "I'm here to end this war," Shanks declared, his gaze firm, revealing unquestionable determination. "Just a pirate." Akainu didn't buy Shanks's account at all. He snorted coldly with a look of disdain. The other hawkish Navy officers also stood behind him and confronted the red hair pirates. Both sides refused to give in. The already tense situation became even more complicated and severe. A new war was about to break out. Chapter 328 The War Ends. "If you haven't fought enough," Shanks, his face impassive, slowly drew the griffin from his waist. The sword gleamed with a cold, icy light in the sunlight. He fixed his gaze firmly on the Marines across from him and declared, "We're here to keep you company." With that, the red hair pirates formed neatly on either side of Shanks, ready to unleash a fierce battle against the Marines at his command. Within the cotwall, red hair Shanks, Kizaru said sarcastically, a half-smile on his face. "Shall we fight, Sakaski?" he spoke, glancing at Akainu, his eyes anticipating a show of excitement, completely unconcerned with the tense situation. "HMPH, Akainu snorted. Though he had been severely injured in his previous battle with Whitebird, his hatred for pirates and his own stubborn character meant he had no intention of retreating. He clenched his fists, the lingering magma within him beginning to surge again. It looked as if no one stopped him, he would recklessly attack the red hair pirates. At this critical moment, "Stop!" Sengoku rushed forward, reaching out to stop Akainu, shouting, "The war is over." He knew full well that the Navy's current state was ill-suited for another war with the red hair pirates. The consequences would be disastrous. Akainu was deeply dissatisfied by this. He frowned, about to protest, when Sengoku added, "I am the Admiral of the Navy." These simple words left Akainu speechless. After all, in the Navy system, the Admiral's orders could not be disobeyed. No matter how reluctant he felt, he had no choice but to swallow his anger for the time being. The battle with the Whitebird pirates had exhausted the Navy. Countless soldiers had been killed or wounded, and the remaining men were exhausted. Their will to fight had long since faded, and they only hoped for a swift end to the conflict. "I will bear all the consequences," Sengoku declared solemnly. The Navy's plan against the Whitebird pirates had failed, and someone had to shoulder the responsibility. He was already planning to retire, so he decided to take the entire responsibility on himself. It was his final act for the next Grand Admiral, hoping to stabilize the Navy and allow it to recover quickly. "Count me in, I'm responsible too," Garp remarked guiltily. He knew full well that if he hadn't been soft-hearted on the battlefield and let Ace and Luffy escape, their escape would have been impossible. He felt that, as a Marine, he had lost his credentials by committing such a crime, and so he shared this responsibility with Sengoku. Sengoku looked at his old friend, finally sighing deeply and saying, "It's up to you." He knew Garp's temper. Once a decision was made, it was hard for others to change it. And Garp certainly had responsibilities, so let's shoulder the responsibility together. "The war is over," Sengoku announced loudly to the entire audience. Hearing this, some of the Marines couldn't help but shed tears, a sigh of relief at having survived, a sense of relief at finally not having to fight again. They hugged each other, celebrating their survival. The battlefield, once filled with smoke and tension, now took on a new atmosphere of mixed joy and sorrow. Seeing this, Shanks breathed a sigh of relief. He hadn't wanted to fight the Marines at this moment either. His stance had always been ambiguous, unlike that of a simple pirate, perhaps due to his unique status. At that moment, Shanks's gaze shifted to Weiss. His familiar nature returned. And with a warm smile, he invited her. "Nice to meet you. Would you like to have a drink?" He was quite interested in Weiss and thought it would be fun to have a drink and chat together. Weiss simply regarded him indifferently and didn't accept. Then, in a flash, he teleported away, leaving Shanks standing there, stunned. "Haha, boss, you're being ignored again." The Red Hair Pirates crew burst into laughter at this. They weren't about to miss this opportunity to tease Shanks. The laughter spread throughout the crowd, making Shanks feel a little awkward, but he simply smiled helplessly and didn't get angry. After all, he'd experienced rejection many times and was used to it. Weiss vanished from sight, returning to his own world in the blink of an eye. Today's trip had yielded a bountiful harvest, yielding a wealth of extremely valuable experimental materials. He was planning to study them with Vegapunk upon his return, hoping to discover something unexpected that would further their ongoing research projects. Meanwhile, in the outside world, Morgans, the news mogul, after learning in detail about the war that had shaken the entire ocean, had thoughtfully coined the name Marine. The scale of this war was truly immense, involving not only a vast number of participants but also 3 of the 4 emperors, powerful beings at the pinnacle of the pirate world, each possessing world-shaking power. In this devastating battle, the legendary pirate Whitebird perished. Furthermore, one of the 7 warlords of the sea also lost his life in the battle, demonstrating the brutality of the war. Furthermore, the intensity and ferocity of this war were unprecedented. It could be said that this battle completely changed the course of the world. Whitebird's final cry. This inspired countless adventurous and ambitious individuals, who flocked to the sea, eager to explore the legendary treasure. Most of these individuals chose to become pirates, further turbulently savaging the already turbulent seas. Furthermore, the Navy, driven to victory in the Battle of Marineford, drew elite troops from various branches, leaving many areas previously occupied by the Navy to maintain order unmanned. The pirates, not to be outdone by this opportunity, engaged in rampant slaughter, looting, and atrocities. Several nations, ill-equipped to resist the pirates, were even overrun. For a time, the war raged, countless innocent lives were lost, and the world was plunged into turmoil and sorrow. The Navy's preoccupation with various matters led to heavy losses, resulting not only in heavy casualties on the battlefield but also in a global war that spiraled out of control. It was said that Sengoku and Garp, filled with guilt, took all the responsibility on themselves. Sengoku even made a major decision. He voluntarily resigned from his position as Grand Admiral, thinking of doing so as to take responsibility and give an explanation to the Navy. Garp, on the other hand, even considered retiring. He felt he no longer had the face to stay in the Navy. After all, some of his actions on the battlefield had indeed had a significant impact on the outcome of the war. However, Sora did not approve their request to retire, but instead asked them to stay and teach the younger generations of the Navy. After all, they were both veterans of the Navy, with extremely rich experience and formidable strength. If they left the Navy like this, it would be a significant loss for the Navy. However, as the 2 of them gradually retreated to the sidelines, no longer as active on the front lines as before, it also meant that an era of the Navy had come to an end, and a new era was about to begin. Chapter 329 Cuzin's Visit. The smoke of the Battle of Marineford has cleared, but its repercussions continue to ripple out. Now, months later, the world remains in turmoil. Countless individuals, driven by various motives, have taken to the sea. This new world, already teeming with danger and opportunity, has been flooded with pirates, a whirlpool that has suddenly slurped up all manner of insidious creatures. These pirates, each driven by ambition, relentlessly assault the territories of the 4 emperors, seeking a share of the spoils and a formidable reputation in this chaotic world. The Whitebird pirates, in particular, were like a piece of fat, bloody meat after their death, attracting the other pirates like sharks, desperate to tear a piece of their flesh from them. Without their anchor, the Whitebird pirates, convinced that they would be easy prey, launched a wave of attacks, seeking to seize their territory, treasure, and other resources. However, the Whitebird pirates refused to give up and fought back fiercely. Although Ace was reluctant to acknowledge Roger as his father, it was undeniable that he had perfectly inherited Roger's talent. Over the past 2 years, protected by Whitebird, his strength had steadily accrued. Now, facing countless challenges, Ace rose to prominence, fighting tirelessly, battle after battle, to uphold the dignity of the Whitebird pirates. It was through these relentless battles that Ace's strength soared, and his bounty steadily increased. Currently, it has reached 2 billion berries, making him the highest bounty among all 4 emperors, a testament to his prowess. Despite the difficult process, under Ace's leadership, the Whitebird pirates, after careful consideration of the pros and cons, abandoned some relatively unimportant areas and concentrated their efforts on defending their core territory. Finally, they managed to maintain their footing in this turbulent world, avoiding complete defeat by the predatory pirates. The Beast's pirates and the Red Hair pirates were not immune, facing challenges from various pirate groups. The Beast's pirates, leveraging their immense combat power, the unique landscape of Wano country, and the numerous Jinjutsu users, easily withstood wave after wave of attacks. On the Red Hair pirates' side, Shanks, with his immense charisma and impressive skills, led his brothers to defend their territory. Of the 4 Emperor's pirate groups, Weiss was the least affected. Although he never formed a true pirate group, he simply guarded Dressrosa. The pirates were wary of him and held on to his territory with little desire. He had no ambition to expand his sphere of influence, merely defending Dressrosa and maintaining relative peace. Aside from those driven by a desire for fame and impulsiveness who'd impulsively attack Dressrosa, most other pirate groups avoided it, refusing to provoke. Those pirates who lacked self-awareness were often dispatched by law before they could even reach Dressrosa. Dressrosa had become a rare haven in the New World, offering its inhabitants freedom from the ravages of pirates. However, on this seemingly peaceful day, an uninvited guest appeared. Law stared at the somewhat slovenly figure before him as if he were facing a formidable enemy. "Why are you here, Admiral Aokiji?" Aokiji, no, Kyuzan, should be called him now, was staring at the dancing woman on the stage with a stoic expression, his eyes fixed on her, unable to move away. He didn't directly answer Law's question, but instead muttered to himself, as expected of a kingdom of love and passion, "The ladies here are incredibly passionate. What on earth is this guy doing?" Law frowned, pondering to himself. He knew full well that with his current strength, he was no match for Aokiji, or Kyuzan, yet his face betrayed no fear. Law knew that Weiss would appear immediately upon giving the signal. Even Kyuzan, no matter how formidable he was, would likely be forced to flee. So, despite his vigilance, he remained composed in the situation. "Don't be so nervous," Kyuzan said, whistling at the young woman on the stage. He looked rather comical, like a child who hadn't grown up. But the young woman on the stage showed no sign of appreciating the horse-faced figure. She didn't even glance at him, remaining absorbed in her dance, as if Kyuzan didn't exist. "I'm no longer a Marine. Stop calling me Aokiji," Kyuzan said casually, yet the message contained within was enough to shock the world. Law was momentarily stunned, his eyes widening in disbelief. After all, Aokiji held a high position in the Navy. How could he suddenly cease to be a Marine? What a dramatic change. It's true, Kyuzan seemed to sense Law's confusion as he slowly rolled up his trouser legs, revealing his prosthetic limbs made of ice. Actually, Kyuzan paused, then began to recount the entire story of his battle with Akainu for the position of Grand Admiral. He sighed softly, a hint of resignation in his tone. "Basically, I had a fight with Sakazuki, lost, and broke my leg." As Law listened, he could imagine the intensity of the battle between the two men. It must have been a world-shattering battle. Both were top-tier warriors in the Navy, equally matched in strength. If they had fought, they would have fought with all their might. "What does this have to do with your visit to Dressrosa?" Law asked, his brow furrowed as he came to his senses. He couldn't understand why Kyuzan was here, telling him all this. Howla Kyuzan scratched his head in annoyance, looking rather innocent. Then, hesitantly, he said, "How should I put it? I'm unemployed and looking for a new job. I wonder if your pirate group is still hiring. You're kidding? Law blushed furiously upon hearing this. A Navy admiral actually becoming a pirate was something he had previously considered unthinkable. If word got out, it would surely cause a global uproar. Law instinctively assumed Cusin was teasing him. I'm serious. Cusin's expression was serious, and it didn't look like a joke. He looked at Law sincerely, as if he truly wanted to join the pirate group. Law was now at a loss, unsure how to handle this sudden situation. Chapter 330 Interview? I didn't expect Dressrosa to become so prosperous, Cusin said, looking around curiously. The streets were bustling with tourists, chatting and laughing, as if this was a peaceful paradise, with no sign of a place ruled by pirates. Law didn't respond. He was still skeptical of Cusin's words. After all, Cusin was a former admiral, and now he suddenly wanted to join the pirate group. Law felt his words were not credible. So he stood quietly by, not responding to Cusin. Cusin didn't feel embarrassed, but continued to observe everything around him. They're called pirate groups, but they don't even have their own flags, and only the heart pirates are former pirates. Cusin thought to himself that this was indeed different from the pirate groups he had known before. There was a strange aura everywhere. Here, the former Dressrosa Kingdom soldiers were still maintaining order. They were dressed in neat uniforms and patrolled in an orderly manner, ensuring the peace of this land. Dressrosa's current prosperity had little to do with Weiss. He was a hands-off manager, spending his days in the lab with Vegapunk, often not venturing out for days at a time, leaving all the outside chores to Law and the others. It was Violet who truly revitalized Dressrosa, even taking it to a higher level. Her years with the Don Quixote family weren't in vain. She learned a great deal there, especially in business, developing her own unique philosophy. Under her guidance, Dressrosa transformed into a hub for the underworld. She didn't engage in any actual business dealings, merely collecting commissions. This, in turn, attracted countless criminals. After all, after the Battle of Marineford, the world was in turmoil, and finding a safe and secure place for conducting business was no easy task. Dressrosa fulfills all of these requirements. It's a haven from the storm, possessing an invisible deterrent that keeps those with ill intentions at bay. Unless someone considers themselves more powerful than the Big Mom pirates, no one dares to cause trouble here. Those who come here adhere strictly to the rules, remaining honest and diligent, intent on completing their transactions safely and leaving. This, little by little, adds up, and Dressrosa's commissions bring in a daily haul, more than enough to sustain the entire nation. Furthermore, besides those who come to engage in underground transactions, countless tourists and those seeking entertainment also come, filling the streets with a vibrant atmosphere. The faces of the people of Dressrosa are filled with joy, a rare sight in these turbulent times. Even among the member states of the world government, few can boast the prosperity of Dressrosa. Is this really a country ruled by pirates? Cusin couldn't help but wonder as he gazed at the peaceful and prosperous scene before him. This was completely different from what he'd imagined a pirate-ruled country would be like. He'd imagined chaos, looting, and slaughter, but reality was such a stark contrast. Cusin's interest in Weiss grew even stronger. After following Law and the others, they arrived at King's Highlands. Upon reaching the castle gates, Cyrus was already waiting there. I thought you were joking. Cyrus looked at Cusin with disbelief. After all, the thought of Cusin, once a Navy admiral, joining the pirates was something anyone would find unbelievable. So, Cyrus genuinely suspected Cusin was joking. Alalala, I need to eat too, Cusin replied with a smile, attempting to explain his purpose with a seemingly light-hearted excuse. But Luo and Kiris didn't believe his explanation at all. They believed Cusin's actions must have a deeper purpose. However, whether to accept Cusin wasn't their decision, it ultimately depended on Weiss's opinion. They reached the castle's top floor. Luo opened the door and saw Weiss sitting on a sofa, quietly flipping through a book. The warm sunlight bathed him, and the scene exuded a strange tranquility and peace. He looked beyond the fear of the young man, a mighty four emperors, and more like an ordinary book lover. Weiss, hearing the noise, looked up at Cusin with a faint smile on her face. Do you like coffee? Not bad, Cusin replied, then sat down across from Weiss and took a sip of the coffee in front of him. The rich flavor spread throughout his mouth, quite pleasant. Do you want to join us? Weiss put down his book, looked directly at Cusin, and asked directly. Yes, Cusin answered without hesitation, still thinking he'd need to elaborate on his reasons for joining. Okay, however, To Cusan's surprise, Weiss agreed so readily. His prepared arguments were rendered useless, leaving him feeling somewhat bewildered. "Do you trust me so much?" Cusan asked, his eyes wide with confusion. He couldn't understand why Weiss agreed so easily. Wasn't she worried about his ulterior motives? "Trust." Weiss tilted her head, a hint of confusion on her face, and continued, "We haven't even met. How can we talk about trust?" Cusan's confusion deepened, his mind swirling with doubt. "The worst-case scenario is that you're an undercover agent sent by the Navy and the world government to gather intelligence and ultimately take me down." Weiss casually delivered these terrifying words as if they were a matter of course. Upon hearing this, Luo and Cyrus immediately stared at Cusan with a wary look in their eyes. Cyrus, in particular, had already subconsciously placed his right hand on the hilt of his sword. As long as Weiss gave the order, he would attack Cusan without hesitation. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 331 Join. Cusan sat uncomfortably on the sofa, as if countless sharp needles were pricking him. None of this matters. The so-called world government is just a game of house on your planet, Weiss said, leaning back on the sofa, her tone filled with disdain, completely dismissing the world government. Against the backdrop of the vast universe, everything controlled by the world government was child's play, like children playing house, seemingly serious but actually childish and ridiculous. How audacious, Cusan couldn't help but mutter under his breath, genuinely shocked by Weiss's arrogant words. As a former Marine, he was well aware of the world government's power and its absolute authority in this world, but Weiss's dismissive remarks were difficult for him to accept, yet he couldn't refute them. He had truly never seen the vastness of the universe that Weiss described. In comparison, they were perhaps like frogs in a well, their horizons too narrow. Cusan knew he was in a difficult position. "What interests me most about your world is the devil fruits," Weiss said suddenly, his gaze fixed on Cusan as he made his demands. "Your first mission is to produce 10 devil fruits or capture 10 devil fruit users." "Ah, is this a token of allegiance?" Cusan asked with a wry smile. Weiss simply nodded. "Whatever method you use, whether you capture Marines or pirates, it's up to you." With these words, Weiss's figure gradually became ethereal, like a bubble, slowly dissipating, leaving only his unquestionable voice echoing in the room. "You only have 7 days." At this moment, only Cusan, Cyrus, and Luo were left in the room, and the atmosphere was so oppressive that it was hard to breathe. Cyrus's face was gloomy, and he gritted his teeth, snarling, "The world government has already abandoned this country once, and this time they're planning a direct attack." He was already convinced that Cusan was an undercover agent sent by the world government. If Weiss hadn't just given Cusan a mission, making his stance clear, he would have been utterly enraged, sword drawn, and charged at him to the death. "Calm down," Luo said, patting Cyrus's shoulder to soothe him. "He can't cause any trouble." Luo had complete faith in Weiss. In his eyes, Weiss's power was unfathomable. No matter what Cusan's ulterior motives, they would be exposed before Weiss, and he wouldn't be able to cause any major disturbance. Cyrus's words reminded him of the magical world Weiss had created. In that world, Weiss displayed power beyond imagination, as if possessing godlike abilities. In his mind, Weiss was practically indistinguishable from a god. If Weiss set her mind to something, nothing was impossible. So what if he's an undercover agent? Betraying Weiss would only make him a guinea pig on the operating table, Luo said coldly, looking at Cusan. "Is that your advice?" Aokiji raised an eyebrow. "No, it's the truth." With that, Luo ignored Cusan and left the room with Cyrus, leaving Cusan sitting there blankly, his face etched with anguish. "This is going to be a tough situation," Cusan scratched his head helplessly. 5 days later, a piece of news, like a bombshell, rocked the world. Streets and alleys were abuzz with discussion, faces filled with astonishment. Former Admiral Aokiji had betrayed the Navy and become a subordinate of the 4 emperors, Weiss. The news spread like wildfire, causing a furor wherever it reached, and Cusan was thrust into the spotlight. Weiss calmly gazed at the 12 pirates frozen solid in ice. These pirates were no ordinary men, each carrying a bounty exceeding 100 million. They were a well-known figure on the seas, a source of headaches for the Navy. It must have cost you a lot of favors to pinpoint these men's locations, Weiss asked softly, tilting his head slightly to look at Cusin. Finding so many pirates with bounties exceeding 100 million in just 7 days was no mean feat. Cusin must have utilized many of his accumulated connections and favors to achieve this feat. Cusin remained silent, saying nothing. A subtle hint of fatigue etched across his face, clearly indicating the immense effort he had put into completing this mission. You've exceeded your expectations. I'm giving you a gift as a congratulations on joining us, Weiss said with a faint smile, his tone as relaxed and casual as if chatting with an old friend. You're so polite. Cusin was about to say something polite, but before he could finish his words, a startling scene occurred. Cracks began to appear on his left leg, made of ice. Then, like shattered glass, it shattered into shards, scattering across the ground. Cusin was startled, thinking Wes was about to attack him. His body instinctively took a defensive stance, his inner domineering aura surging, and he instinctively wanted to resist. However, Cusin quickly suppressed the impulse. He knew that if Wes really wanted to harm him, he wouldn't have needed to talk about giving him a gift. And with Wes's strength, resisting him would probably be useless. As he thought this, he suddenly felt a strange itching at the wound where his leg had been broken. It felt like countless small insects were gently crawling there. Cusin quickly rolled up his trouser leg to investigate, and what he saw left him speechless. Suddenly, granulation tissue began to form at the side of the broken leg. These granulations, tender and pink, grew at a visible rate. Then, blood vessels gradually extended, followed by the bones, slowly becoming complete, and the muscles gradually firmed. Before long, his left leg had grown back completely. Cusin stomped his foot and found it was exactly the same as his original left leg, as if it had never been broken. The only difference was the skin on the new leg, which was a little wider than the original. But compared to having a complete leg, this was a minor issue. Are you satisfied? Weiss asked with a smile, observing Cusin's astonishment. It's a miracle, Cusin exclaimed in amazement, finally coming to his senses. He had never expected Weiss's gift to be such a miraculous surprise. The loss of his left leg had always been a regret for him. Many devil fruits can achieve this effect. From now on, you will follow Law's instructions, C said, waving his hand. The 12 frozen pirates slowly rose with him, then vanished again as if melting into thin air, leaving Cusin standing there, still in shock. Thank you for your guidance. Cusin quickly regained his composure, gathering his thoughts and extending his right hand towards Law with a friendly smile, hoping to establish a closer relationship. However, Law simply ignored him, not even glancing at him, and turned away. Cusin's cold attitude left him frozen in place, his hand stretched in midair, unable to retract or release it. He sighed helplessly, thinking that integrating into this team would probably take a lot of effort. Chapter 332 Convening. Tiny specks of starlight floated around Weiss, twinkling with a strange and captivating light, as if the brightest stars in the night sky had been plucked and fallen. They were devil fruits, though not in their typical form, but in their most primitive form. Devil fruits actually carry the long-sought possibility of human evolution. They are the convergence of human will, possessing no fixed, unchanging form. It's simply that they possess various fruits, hence the name devil fruit. Even more intriguing, Weiss discovered through his long research that magic and devil fruits are essentially the same, both imbuing a mysterious power beyond the ordinary. Devil fruits also held a glimmer of the power of laws, which undoubtedly held a profound allure for Weiss, like a guiding light in the darkness, something he had long dreamed of, something he longed to comprehend and explore. To deeply comprehend the laws within his devil fruits, Weiss drew upon the power of the Mind Stone. He immersed himself in his contemplation, severing all ties to the outside world. Time slipped quietly in this atmosphere of quiet concentration, and months passed before he knew it. Weiss remained immersed in the profound and obscure world of laws, constantly pondering and comprehending, experiencing countless moments of confusion and sudden enlightenment. Finally, he slowly opened his eyes, a hint of fatigue yet a gleam of excitement. After a long period of secluded study, he had gained a deeper understanding and knowledge of the power of the laws. Weiss slowly stood up, straightened his slightly disheveled clothes, and walked out of the laboratory. After slowly leaving the laboratory, Weiss headed straight for the control center of the Mage Tower. Runes emanating a strange light flickered on the walls. In the center of the control center stood a uniquely shaped and exquisite chair, a masterpiece meticulously crafted by Weiss through alchemy. The chair's material appeared neither metal nor wood, its surface radiating a soft yet profound sheen. Intricate and mysterious patterns were carved into it, seemingly shimmering according to a certain pattern. Wes walked steadily to the chair and slowly sat down. Through this chair, imbued with the power of alchemy, Wes felt as if he had gained a god's eye view, perceiving everything happening in the world he had crafted. The growth of every flower and plant, the movement of every insect, were all presented before his eyes. He first cast his gaze towards the Black Dwarf tribe, which was now filled with a lively and festive atmosphere. Numerous newborns were born, their tender cries a clarion call of new hope, filling the entire community with life and energy. As the number of newborns continued to increase, the tribe gradually expanded. The once modest houses began to be expanded and renovated. The faces of the tribe members were filled with smiles of happiness and anticipation, working together for the future of the tribe. Then, Weiss's gaze shifted to the medicinal fields. Under the meticulous care of the kind and hard-working Tandida, the fields were lush and flourishing. Various rare herbs swayed gently in the breeze, stretching their tender green branches and leaves, emitting a refreshing aroma. These herbs appeared to be of exceptional quality, clearly thriving under the Tantida's meticulous care. It turned out that luring the Tantida here was a wise decision. Looking at the branches of the sun tree Eve, planted and transplanted just a year ago, the transformation they had undergone was astonishing. What began as a mere branch, nourished by this magical land and the magical environment Weiss had masterfully orchestrated, had grown into a towering tree, hundreds of meters tall. Its thick trunk required several people to hug, and its lush branches and leaves blocked out the sun, casting patches of cool shade. Furthermore, the animals Weiss had collected from all over the land had successfully thrived in this favorable environment, establishing their own populations. The once desolate and lifeless world was now filled with vibrant animal life. Seeing all this, Weiss smiled with satisfaction, and a new idea emerged. It was time to expand this space. He slowly closed his eyes and began to concentrate on channeling the surging magic within him. Like a surging tide, the magic flowed from his body, rapidly spreading along the chair, then through the carefully constructed magic net. Like an invisible net, it instantly spread to the boundaries of the space. Wherever the magic reached, space began to expand. New lands unfolded like a scroll, vast plains, rolling mountains, and surging rivers appearing one after another, as if nature's magical hand were working a magnificent creation within the void. Weiss, not content with this, attempted to harness the power of the laws he had recently comprehended from his devil fruit to make this new world appear more vivid and real, imbued with a natural charm and order. He channeled the power of the laws into the mountains and rivers, imbuing their contours with a more majestic and rugged presence, and the rivers with a more rhythmic flow. Weiss concentrated on wielding his magic and applying the laws until his magic power was nearly depleted, finally pausing. Then, through the magical power of his chair, he once again surveyed the world and saw that, thanks to his efforts, the world he had created had reached nearly 100,000 square kilometers. This area was already larger than many countries in the pirate world. This area is already larger than many countries in the pirate world, a testament to Weiss's creative power and the fruit of months of painstaking research and meticulous construction. After Weiss's magic power had slightly recovered, his figure flickered and vanished in an instant, as if blending into the air. The next moment, he reappeared in the castle of King's Highlands. Weiss spoke softly, his voice echoing directly into the minds of Law, King Riku, and the others. "Come see me." Law was in a secluded corner, studying some medical texts. Hearing Weiss's voice echo in his mind, he was startled for a moment, then put down the scroll, stood up, and hurried towards the castle. King Riku, meanwhile, was busy attending to some kingdom affairs. The moment Weiss's voice reached his mind, he too was startled. He quickly put aside his current affairs, straightened his clothes, and hurried towards the castle. Along the way, King Riku was filled with doubt and speculation, unsure of the exact purpose of Weiss's summons. However, he understood that, given Weiss's current position and influence in this land, whatever it was must be of vital importance. The others who received the summons followed suit, halting what they were doing and, filled with awe and trepidation, hurried towards the castle of King's Heights. Chapter 333 Meeting. King Riku, despite his hasty progress, was ultimately the last to arrive at the castle. As he entered the hall, he glanced around and was surprised to find Kuzan also there, having also received a summons from Weiss. King Riku, like everyone else, had little trust in Kuzan. After all, Cuzin's past and unfathomable strength instilled a certain degree of fear in everyone, who felt he was a potential bomb, a source of uncertainty and uncertainty. However, they held Weiss in absolute respect and obedience. Even though they harbored doubts about Cuzin, they would not question his orders. Once everyone arrived, Weiss unexpectedly struck up a casual conversation with Cuzin, seemingly enjoying a relaxed atmosphere. Weiss looked at Cuzin with a faint smile on her face and asked, "How are you feeling?" Cuzin, with a calm expression, shrugged and replied, "Pretty good." He wasn't lying. Since arriving in Dressrosa, he'd indeed been enjoying a leisurely life. Law and Violet had always been wary of Cuzin, so they usually didn't dare assign him any important tasks, only simpler ones. For example, they'd ask him to clear out pirates in the nearby waters and maintain law and order. For the powerful Cuzin, this was a complete overkill. The pirates who dominated the seas were often terrified at the sight of Cuzin taking action, often surrendering without even a shred of resistance. After all, Cuzin's renowned ice fruit ability and his reputation as a former admiral were no pushovers. Because of this, the seas of Dressrosa, under his intimidation, became exceptionally peaceful, with few daring to wreak havoc there. As a result, Cuzin's days were spent in idleness, like a homeless vagrant, truly utterly bored. With nothing to do, he struck upon a whim and used his abilities to build an ice park. Initially, it was simply a whim, a way to find something to do to pass the time. Unexpectedly, the ice park became a huge hit with the citizens of Dressrosa. Dressrosa is a summer island with a perennially hot climate, and most residents had never seen snow and ice. So, when this crystal clear, magical ice park appeared, it instantly captivated everyone. It wasn't long before the park was packed with people, from the elderly to the innocent, all adoring it. Elderly people sat on ice benches, watching the children play and laugh on the surface, their faces beaming with joy. Children, on the other hand, slid excitedly up and down the ice slides, or chased each other across the surface, having a blast. Everyone expressed their deepest gratitude to Cuzin, believing he had brought a new sense of joy and coolness to this scorching island. Cuzin, while he had received gratitude from civilians before during his time in the Navy, felt something special this time. Standing in a corner of the ice park, observing the lively and joyful scene before him, a strange warmth and satisfaction welled up in his heart. For the first time, he deeply realized that his abilities, beyond their power in battle, could also bring so much joy to others. Over time, the ice park's fame grew, becoming a landmark of Dressrosa, attracting countless visitors from other parts of the world. They all wanted to see this magical world of ice for themselves, to experience the wonder of interacting with ice and snow in the sweltering summer heat. After seeing all this, King Riku and Violet's attitude towards Cuzin also unconsciously changed. In the past, they always looked at Cuzin with a bit of caution and refused to communicate with him. Now, they can occasionally have a meal together. After a casual exchange of pleasantries, they began to get down to business. Violet took a step forward, her expression respectful and serious, and began to report the situation in Dressrosa to Weiss in detail. Although Weiss usually delegated power and focused on his research and exploration in the Mage Tower, in the hearts of everyone, Weiss had long been regarded as the true king of this country and had deep respect and awe for him. Therefore, they were particularly attentive when reporting, not daring to slack off in the slightest. Weiss listened attentively, nodding occasionally with a flicker of approval on his face. When Violet finished her report, he praised her. "You did a great job." While Violet's abilities might be considered average among the others, she possessed a natural talent for management. With keen insight and exceptional organizational skills, she managed all matters, large and small, throughout Dressrosa with impeccable order. This was one of the reasons Weiss admired her so much and entrusted her with such a significant task. Law then spoke, recounting some major events at sea. When the mention of Akainu taking over as Grand Admiral came up, the atmosphere in the hall seemed to grow tense, and everyone's gaze instinctively turned to Cuzin. After all, everyone knew of Cuzin's past relationship with Akainu. They had served together as admirals, but their differences led to their separation, even resulting in a thrilling battle. Cuzin simply shrugged, his expression remaining impassive, making it difficult to discern his true thoughts. Law then moved on to another topic. The world government is recruiting new pirates to complete the Shichibukai. This news sparked a flurry of discussion, as everyone understood the potential strategic implications of the world government's actions, including new plans for the maritime landscape. "One more thing," Law said, pulling out a letter from his pocket and handing it to Weiss, his expression slightly grave. Weiss took the letter and gazed upon the signature, Portgas Ace. A slight joke struck him, and he had already guessed the general content. He opened the letter and quickly scanned it, finding its contents as he had expected. Ace expressed his fervent desire to redeem Whitebird's body, promising to do so at any cost. Chapter 334 Pacifist. Cusin froze in place, his eyes filled with astonishment and disbelief. He instinctively glanced around. Where's this? Welcome to my world. Weiss opened his arms. Cusin finally came to his senses. Everything before him was beyond his previous understanding. His eyes widened, trying to take in everything around him. The towering Mage Tower, the vast expanse of land, the crisscrossing mountains and rivers, and the vibrant life, everything was awestruck. Really, Cusin opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but found himself unable to find words to describe the complex and turbulent emotions surging through him. Weiss's world, unfolding so vividly before his eyes, was truly insane, unbelievable. His mind was a whirlwind, a sea of thoughts racing through him. He was filled with awe at Weiss's immense power, and a curiosity about the origins of this magical world. He couldn't calm down for a long time. What a mistake. I thought I'd overestimated him, but I've actually underestimated his strength, Cusin pondered to himself. However, Cusin had weathered many storms, and despite the turmoil within him, he maintained a composed demeanor, not letting anyone else see the slightest hint of his inner turmoil. Cusin lowered his head slightly, a complex expression in his eyes as he followed Weiss closely, heading towards their destination, Vegapunk's research facility. All the way, his mind reeled from the shocking news he had just learned, his thoughts lingering for a long time. No wonder we haven't found any information about the doctor, Cusin thought to himself. Ever since Weiss had kidnapped Vegapunk, the world government and the Navy had expended enormous resources searching for his whereabouts. They had dispatched wave after wave of intelligence agents, searching nearly every possible location, but in the end, they had uncovered no useful information. It turned out that Vegapunk wasn't even in the same world. Under these circumstances, no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't possibly obtain any valuable clues. Soon, they arrived at the Institute's main entrance. Before they could even enter, Vegapunk approached, a look of fatigue on his face. Upon seeing Weiss, he began to complain, "We're running out of materials again. This is really slowing down our research. For researchers, materials are like weapons. Without them, many experiments can't proceed." Weiss quickly reassured him, "The next batch is on the way. Don't worry." Vegapunk's expression softened slightly. Then, Weiss asked, "Is everything I need ready?" Vegapunk nodded, confirming that everything was ready, which brought a hint of satisfaction to Weiss's face. Just then, Cusin greeted him, "Long time no see, Doctor." Vegapunk, noticing Cusin's presence, replied, "Cusin." The two had known each other from previous business dealings, but they hadn't expected to meet again in such a setting. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, they headed toward the interior of the research institute. They passed through numerous checkpoints, each equipped with complex mechanisms and verification procedures. Finally, they arrived at a deeply hidden laboratory. Upon entering, Cusin's pupils instantly constricted, a look of profound astonishment crossed his face, and he instinctively let out an "ah-la-la." Dozens of enormous petri dishes filled the lab, and within them, striking figures floated quietly. Even in this state, the once mighty Whitebird exuded a commanding majesty. And then there was Big Mom, her massive form standing out against the petri dishes. The three dessert generals were also prominently present. The entire Blackbeard pirates were present. Beyond that, there were a number of equally renowned pirates, each one a force to be reckoned with, each one a force to be feared and utterly terrifying. Cusin knew that if these individuals were to reappear in the outside world, they would undoubtedly unleash a war on the scale of Marineford, shocking the entire pirate world. Yet, now, they had all been reduced to mere experimental subjects. The scene was truly shocking. As Cusin was still absorbed in this astonishing scene, Vegapunk declared, "The world government has assigned me to research pacifists," pressing a button. With a hum of mechanical movement, the door to the secret chamber slowly swung open, revealing dozens of pacifists neatly arrayed on either side. Modeled after Bartholomew Kuma, these pacifists exuded a cold metallic sheen. Each one was equipped with a variety of advanced weaponry, making their combat power formidable. Each pacifist possessed the power to take on pirates with bounties exceeding 100 million. The combined power of these dozens of pacifists was equivalent to that of tens of thousands of elite naval forces. If deployed on the battlefield, they would undoubtedly become a formidable force that could change the course of the war. However, an even more astonishing scene was yet to come. Just as Cusan's attention was drawn to the dozens of pacifists, he heard soft footsteps, and then 8 brown-skinned, white-haired children emerged from another corridor of the laboratory. "What are these?" Cusan's eyes widened, his face filled with confusion and shock, and he asked instinctively. Although these children looked very young and immature, after a closer look, Cusan recognized them instantly by their familiar facial features and unique temperaments. Whitebird, Big Mom, Hawkeye, Blackbeard, Katakuri, Boa Hancock, Jinbei, and Bartholomew Kuma. Cusan was deeply shocked. He had never expected to see these characters in their childhood here. Looking at Cusan's astonished expression, Vegapunk showed a smug look on his face and explained, "These were created by fusing the blood of the Lunarians, so they have the physical characteristics and abilities of the Lunarians. I named them Seraphim," Vegapunk continued with some pride. "Don't underestimate them. Although they still look like children, each Seraphim has strength close to that of the 7 warlords of the sea. Once they grow up, or after further development and improvement, their strength will be immeasurable." Cusan felt more and more shocked in his heart. If this were to be known by the outside world, it would probably cause another uproar in the entire pirate world. Chapter 335 Small Actions. The concept of the pacifists and seraphs was originally proposed by the 5 elders. To successfully develop them, the world government invested enormous resources, mobilizing numerous top researchers and expending vast sums on rare materials and advanced research equipment. They also secretly dispatched agents to collect DNA from the 7 warlords of the sea, intending to leverage the genetic advantages of these powerful pirates to create a formidable force capable of controlling the entire pirate world. Who could have imagined that all this effort would ultimately benefit Weiss? Now, a combination as outrageous as the 4 emperors and the 7 warlords of the sea has been formed, a lineup that would send shudders down the spine of ordinary people. Weiss's face lit up with satisfaction, and she nodded slightly in approval. "Not bad. Next, let's get into the actual combat phase." Weiss held supreme authority over both the seraphs and the pacifists. Here, his orders were absolute, unchallenged. Weiss then seemed to recall something and turned to Vegapunk, asking, "Is Whitebird's body still useful?" Vegapunk pondered for a moment before replying, "We've already collected all the DNA we need. Aside from its collectible value, the body is of no further use." Weiss replied, "I see," and then, leaving the facility with the seraphim and the pacifists, Vegapunk returned to the depths of the facility. While crafting the seraphim, a new idea suddenly struck him. He was currently lacking some key materials, but once the next batch arrived, he could begin work on this new idea. Cusan, on the other hand, remained silent the entire way. His mind was racing with thoughts. Weiss's current strength and terrifying war potential were truly astonishing. This wasn't simply individual strength, it was a force capable of changing the entire world. The Navy and the world government couldn't help but take notice. If Weiss ever developed other ambitions, with all this power, she could truly overturn the entire world. Then, the pirate world would likely be plunged into unprecedented turmoil. Upon returning to Dressrosa, Weiss immediately issued an order that shook everyone to their core, hunting espers. He then emphasized the importance of capturing them alive. Cusan, Law, and Kyrus led their respective teams, each commanding 2 powerful seraphim and a team of pacifista. This combination ensured a decisive battle against any formidable opponent. On the other hand, Black Dwarf would lead the remaining seraphim and pacifista forces to defend Dressrosa. After all, the power Weiss controlled had already attracted widespread attention, and no one could guarantee that ulterior motives would not seize upon their hunting opportunities to launch an attack on Dressrosa. Therefore, ensuring a sound defense of the homeland was crucial. Weiss's intervention further escalated the already turbulent New World. All factions speculated about Weiss's intentions, and tensions grew throughout the pirate world. The appearance of the mysterious and powerful seraphim during the hunt shocked all factions on the sea. No one had anticipated Weiss's formidable power, which undoubtedly added another layer of uncertainty to the situation. Law, by nature, was not one for ruthless cruelty. Even after becoming a pirate, he always maintained his integrity and never attacked civilians. This time, upon receiving orders, he focused his efforts on the pirates, marines, and bounty hunters who had recently arrived in the New World. These newcomers were relatively unprepared, and their abilities varied, making them easier targets for Law and his team. Cusin, on the other hand, set his sights on pirates, particularly those notorious gangs known for their crimes at sea. With his extensive combat experience and immense strength, along with the assistance of the Seraphs and pacifists, any pirates found to have consumed a devil fruit were virtually impossible to escape. He even hunted down several members of the Beast Pirates. However, this large-scale hunting operation wasn't entirely without its drawbacks. With the capture of so many pirates, the number of pirates in the New World's waters decreased significantly, allowing nations long plagued by piracy to finally breathe a sigh of relief and a respite. The people no longer had to live in constant fear. Witnessing Dressrosa's immense power, smaller powers and nations, seeing the stability and security offered by affiliation, were tempted to join them, further expanding Dressrosa's influence in the New World. The world government, however, was faced with a dire situation. The New World is completely out of control, Satan said, frowning, breaking the oppressive silence in the conference room, his voice tinged with disbelief and anxiety. After all, the situation in the New World had always been of great concern to the world government, one they sought to maintain tight control over. But now, thanks to Weiss's actions, the situation had become so chaotic that it had exceeded their expectations. Order the Navy to attack Dressrosa. Nasujiro slammed the table, stood up, and declared with a frantic and aggressive tone. He believed that Dressrosa was acting so recklessly, openly launching a large-scale esper hunting operation in the New World and displaying such formidable combat power. They needed to be taught a lesson. Using force to suppress them would demonstrate the world government's authority and bring the situation back under control. However, his proposal was quickly rejected by the others. The Navy had only just relocated its headquarters to the New World and had yet to establish a firm foothold. To rashly start a war with the Yonko now would require the deployment of numerous elite forces from various branches. However, if the branches' forces were withdrawn, the previously relatively stable regions of the Four Seas would be left depleted. Pirates and criminals there would undoubtedly seize the opportunity to stir up trouble, plunging the Four Seas into chaos. Furthermore, the Navy didn't have a guaranteed chance of victory in a war with Dressrosa. A failure would have catastrophic consequences, the risk was simply too great. Just as everyone was scowling, struggling to come up with a plan, Moz suddenly announced, CP0 intelligence reports that Cusin has captured Sasaki of the Beast Pirates. The others were stunned at first, then suddenly understood, a sly glint in their eyes. Provoke a conflict between the Beast Pirates and Dressrosa, letting them fight each other. This way, without risking our navy, we can reap the benefits and perhaps even stabilize the New World. Vouchery proposed this idea, and the proposal was immediately met with unanimous approval. After all, the world government is very good at doing some shady tricks behind the scenes and taking advantage of the conflicts between various forces to achieve its own goals. It is naturally most appropriate to entrust this task to the CP organization under their command, which is responsible for intelligence and covert operations. Chapter 336 Rumors. Rumors suddenly erupted on the seas surrounding the Beast Pirates. Like a surging tide, these rumors spread rapidly throughout the pirate world, becoming a popular topic of conversation. The rumors claimed that the Beast Pirates seemed to fear Weiss. And there was even evidence. Their leader had been captured by Weiss, yet they hadn't even reacted, simply enduring the situation. Some even harshly disparaged Kato, saying he wasn't even worthy of being compared to Weiss, let alone the late Whitebird. Whitebird's willingness to risk his life to save his crew, his generosity and loyalty, stood in stark contrast to Kato's current behavior. Initially, these rumors were limited to a small circle. However, in just a few days, they spread like wildfire, spreading throughout the New World. An invisible force was driving these rumors with astonishing speed. Even the World Economic Herald published a lengthy article about the incident, undoubtedly fueling the rumors. After all, gossip about prominent figures always attracts attention and draws people in. Whether in the bustling harbor taverns or on the decks of pirate ships, people were seriously discussing the question of who was stronger, Weiss or Kato. Each one, like a seasoned analyst, offered their own opinions and engaged in endless debate. Behind the scenes, however, were those with ulterior motives, secretly manipulating public opinion and driving the situation in an increasingly dire direction. On Onigashima Island in Wano country, an atmosphere of oppression and anger enveloped the area. A massive blue dragon tumbled endlessly in the sky, its massive body stirring the surrounding clouds, its every movement tinged with boundless fury. Cato roared angrily, "How dare you say I'm inferior to a brat who's only been in the game for a year?" His voice was brimming with powerful conqueror's haki. With his roar, it surged across Onigashima like a surging wave. The weaker pirates on Onigashima were knocked unconscious by the overwhelming force of this haki, falling to the ground in disarray. "Boss Jin, is this really okay?" Jack asked Jin softly, gazing at the enraged Cato in the air with concern. He knew the consequences of Cato's anger were unpredictable. "Let him vent," Jin said calmly with a slight sigh. He knew Cato had been feeling pent up for a while, and these rumors had inflamed his rage, making it difficult to contain. Cato actually wanted to attack Dressrosa, proving his strength and refuting the rumors with force. But Jin knew that doing so would play into the world government's trap. Jin is well versed in the world government's tactics, fully aware of their cunning and deceitful tactics. Had he not intervened promptly, Cato might have impulsively stormed Dressrosa and staged a rampage. By then, the Beast's pirates would have been in a precarious position. "Alien, Wes Erwin," Jin muttered the name softly, his mind swirling with thoughts. He actually defeated Big Mom, a figure who rivals the Governor-General in strength. A conflict with him would do more harm than good. As the Beast's pirates' brain trust, Jin, with his keen intelligence analysis skills, clearly determined from the available intelligence that a war between the Beast's pirates and Weiss's Dressrosa would be highly likely to result in their defeat. The strength currently displayed by Dressrosa was already exceeding expectations. No wonder the world government was so deliberately fomenting conflict between the two sides. Jin gazed at the turbulency in the distance, a sense of foreboding rising in his heart. It was like a heavy, lingering cloud, a feeling that wouldn't dispel. By now, nearly everyone on the sea knew Weiss's intense interest in devil fruits. Rumors circulated that Weiss had mastered a unique method that allowed her to extract devil fruits directly from espers. Everyone knew where the vast concentration of devil fruits was currently occurring. Besides the God World government and the powerful marine headquarters, the only other location was the Beast's pirates. The Beast's pirates boasted numerous devil fruit users, particularly those with Zoan-type abilities. Perhaps a proactive attack would be a good idea, the thought flashed through Jin's mind, and he frowned, lost in deep hesitation. While a proactive attack might disrupt the enemy's plans and gain a certain advantage, it also carried numerous unpredictable risks. Weiss's strength should not be underestimated. A rash action could potentially lead the Beast's pirates to an irretrievable end. However, while King was still hesitating and weighing the pros and cons, Weiss, far away in Dressrosa, was already intensely discussing how to attack Wano country. Coincidentally, Weiss's thoughts coincided with King's. In Weiss's eyes, the Beast pirates, with their numerous special abilities, were a perfect target. Provoking conflict between other factions in order to profit from it was clearly the case in this situation. "Are we really going to attack the Beast pirates?" Law frowned slightly, his face filled with worry. He looked at Weiss and couldn't help but advise, "This is clearly a world government conspiracy. They just want to watch us and the Beast pirates fight to a mutual defeat, so they can reap the benefits." Weiss naturally understood this. He curled his lips slightly, revealing a confident smile, his eyes full of determination. "Mutually defeated? That's impossible. With a Beast's pirate strength, I can take them out alone. They're nothing to be afraid of. The reason I'm bringing everyone along this time is simply because I'm worried about some of them slipping through the net. After all, Wano country is quite large. It would be a shame if a few espers escaped during the chaos." Law opened his mouth, as if about to say something more, but ultimately swallowed his words and chose silence. He knew Weiss always had her own ideas and was indeed powerful. Now that Weiss had said so, there seemed no point in continuing to dissuade her. Chapter 337 Raid. Buzz, a massive airship soared steadily through the azure sky. From the airship, one could clearly see Wano country's famous cliff waterfall. The cliffs towered into the clouds, like a sharp blade piercing the heavens, while the waterfall cascaded down from the cliff top like a white ribbon, splashing countless water and making a deafening sound. This precipitous natural barrier acted as a barrier, deterring most pirates who attempted to enter Wano country, forcing them to retreat and abandon the idea of taking the risk. Wano country is a deeply xenophobic nation, long practicing a policy of isolation and limiting contact with the outside world. Coupled with its unique geographical location, surrounded by the sea and protected by numerous strategic terrain, even the world government, after weighing the pros and cons, was reluctant to go to war with Wano country. After all, the cost of conquering such a difficult-to-attack nation was too high. Today, the daimyo position in Wano country lies in the hands of Kurazumi Orochi. Back then, he allied himself with the beast pirates and, through a series of cunning schemes, forcibly seized the supreme daimyo position from the Kazuki clan, dealing a heavy blow to the latter. Everything is proceeding according to plan. This time, to achieve his goal, Weiss mobilized every available force and made thorough preparations. The members of the Heart Pirates were on full alert. The Dressrosa army was also well organized. There was the formidable Kuzan. And then there were the pacifist Seraphs. Weiss's goal wasn't simply to defeat the beast pirates, his ambition was even greater, to conquer the entire Wano country in one fell swoop and bring it under his control. The entire plan was simple and straightforward. Weiss and Kuzan, armed with their immense strength, would storm Onigashima and confront the beast pirates head-on. The rest of the group would march towards the flower capital to capture all members of the Kurazumi clan. At the same time, every esper within Wano country must be captured, one by one, to ensure no valuable target escapes. Everyone on the airship was making final preparations for the battle. 10,000 meters above Onigashima, the bottom of the airship slowly opened, revealing an opening. Weiss and Kuzan stood at the edge, their expressions stern and silent, their gaze fixed on the mist-shrouded Onigashima below. A second later, they leaped in. Seconds later, Kato, already drunk and immersed in the effects of his alcohol, suddenly opened his bloodshot eyes. His powerful observation haki, still sharp even in his drunken state, instantly detected an unusual presence rapidly approaching Onigashima. Without hesitation, Kato flashed, transforming into his blue dragon form. His massive body crashed through the roof and soared into the air. As soon as he emerged from the air, Kato's sharp dragon eyes captured the two rapidly falling figures. When he saw the face of one of them clearly, his eyes widened and he roared, "Aokiji!" This wasn't the first time Kato and Kuzan had met, they had clashed several times before, so Kato immediately recognized his old foe. Knowing Kuzan's formidable strength, Kato dared not slack off. He opened his massive dragon maw and violently unleashed a fiery breath. The breath, like a raging torrent of flame, roared towards Weiss and Kuzan, reaching a range of kilometers. Wherever it passed, moisture in the air instantly evaporated. The surrounding air seemingly ablaze. Even a mountaintop would be instantly vaporized by this breath, leaving no trace. However, to Kato's complete surprise, just as the breath was about to strike Weiss and Kuzan, it seemed to hide an invisible barrier, abruptly blocking its path. Furthermore, after striking the barrier, the heat was actually reflected back, hurtling towards Kato at an even faster speed. Kato, still drunk, reacted slightly slower than usual. Unable to dodge, he was struck by the rebounding attack, sending his massive body plummeting uncontrollably downward. With a resounding bang, Kato's massive form slammed down onto Onigashima, crushing numerous buildings. Under Kato's mountainous weight, the once sturdy houses and buildings were instantly reduced to rubble, sending clouds of dust soaring into the air. Many pirates, still unaware of what had happened, were crushed to death beneath the rubble, plunging Onigashima into chaos and wailing. Meanwhile, Aokiji, plummeting through the air, accelerated, like a falling star. A chill began to emanate from his body, growing increasingly intense, spreading rapidly from him. In the blink of an eye, Aokiji's body crashed onto Onigashima. Ice Age. Instantly, an extremely cold force erupted from him, sweeping across Onigashima and the surrounding sea. The previously turbulent sea was instantly covered by a thick layer of ice. The waves, frozen in that moment, transformed into crystalline ice sculptures. Onagashima's buildings, flowers, trees, and everything else were also encased in frost. The entire island and the surrounding sea were instantly plunged into a frigid ice age, blanketed in a blanket of white, a chill permeating every corner. While this immensely powerful blow successfully froze Onigashima and the surrounding sea, it also sapped Kuzan's energy. Panting slightly, Kuzan quickly pulled a bottle of green glowing potion from his pocket. Without hesitation, he brought the bottle to his lips and gulped it down. The moment the potion entered his system, Kuzan felt a distinct warmth surge through him. His body, exhausted from unleashing powerful attacks, was infused with new vitality, and his strength began to rapidly recover. What a wonderful thing, Kuzan couldn't help but whisper in admiration. His thoughts drifted back to the fierce battle with Akainu for the position of Grand Admiral. Back then, He and Akenyu had fought on Punk Hazard Island. Both had unleashed their full might, the battle lasting for a long time, and their physical strength had been exhausted to the limit. If he had possessed this potion back then, able to restore his strength in time and maintain peak combat condition, he was confident that he would have been absolutely certain of victory. Perhaps the situation at Marine headquarters would be completely different today. Just as Kuzan was sighing, Weiss slowly descended from the sky like a light feather. Weiss glanced at Kuzan and said, "Well done, you've cleared out the small fry." However, this was just the beginning. The real battle was about to begin. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 338 Ashes. Aokiji. Kato's furious roar cracked the frozen sky. Before he'd even finished his roar, he brandished his massive, heavy mace and charged towards Kuzan like a raging beast. The mace's swing sent gusts of whistling wind through the air, rending the surrounding air. Seeing this, Aokiji's expression remained stern. He calmly raised his hand. From his palm, 5 thick icicles instantly erupted. Like sharp arrows, they shot towards Kato, reaching him at breakneck speed in the blink of an eye. The icicles precisely wrapped around Kato's body, then rapidly expanded, freezing him in a giant icy ball. From afar, the ball resembled a shimmering crystal, trapping Kato securely within. Kato's immense strength was evident in the next instant, when a crackling sound was heard. He had actually managed to forcefully break the seal on the ice ball from within. Kato's eyes burned with rage as he raised his mace high once more. Thunder Bagua, purple lightning clung to the mace, crackling and flickering, unleashing a terrifyingly powerful energy. Then, he swung the mace, brimming with the force of lightning, and smashed it down on Kuzan. Quick-witted and quick-handed, Kuzan met the blow with a fist without hesitation. While Kuzan is renowned for his powerful ice fruit abilities, many overlook that he is also a master of taijutsu and haki. In his youth, he trained with Garp, receiving his true teachings and developing exceptional taijutsu techniques. Boom! The two attacks collided, their powerful impact causing the surrounding air to explode, creating visible waves of air that surged outward. Kuzan was ultimately outmatched by the immense force, taking 2 steps back, his feet leaving long scars on the ice. Fortunately, he managed to halt Kato's ferocious attack, temporarily halting his advance. Meanwhile, Weiss stood aside, calmly surveying the situation. Due to the power of Kuzan's previous ice age, most of the pirates were frozen in place, unable to move. However, some powerful officers had escaped the ice and rushed to support Kato. The 3 calamities and the remaining 5 flying six converged fiercely. Especially Jin, he instantly transformed into a pteranodon, his massive wingspan sweeping through the air, stirring up a gust of wind as he flew towards them at high speed, his eyes etched with determination and fierceness. But just as Jin was rapidly approaching Weiss, he felt as if an invisible mountain had crushed him. The crushing pressure instantly reduced his speed, sending him plummeting uncontrollably. He wasn't alone. The other 7, upon approaching the area, were similarly immobilized by this inexplicable weight. They could only struggle with difficulty, faces filled with shock and agony. Roar, roar, roar. After several deafening roars, 8 bizarre ancient creatures suddenly appeared before Weiss. "It's like a zoo," Weiss quipped, gazing at the diverse array of ancient creatures. Amulet Fire Dragon King, Jin unleashed his full force. A massive flaming giant lunged towards Weiss. The other officers, in turn, unleashed their unique skills, launching a frenzied attack on Weiss. "Get down," Weiss muttered expressionlessly. Gravity in the surrounding area instantly doubled again, and the beast's pirates' leaders felt their bodies grow heavier. Many of their attacks lost their aim, and some were even pinned to the ground by the sudden surge of gravity. To minimize the impact, the 3 calamities and the flying six transformed back into human form, each with a look of agony on their face. Damn it! Jin's eyes burned red, and veins bulged on his forehead. He exerted all his strength, trying to rise from the immense pressure, but the weight felt like 1,000 mountains, pressing down on him, every muscle trembling and making it impossible to move an inch. Click, click, as Jin struggled against the crushing pressure of gravity, a shoe slowly appeared in his sight. With great effort, Jin raised his head and looked up along the shoe, only to see Weiss's face. Weiss had removed his hood, revealing Jin's handsome features. But at this moment, Jin's face was completely devoid of his usual composure and calm, replaced by a blazing indignation. His once deep, piercing eyes burned with rage, his features distorted by the intense emotion. The serifs developed by Vegapunk were created using his genes as a template. Jin was a remnant of the Lunaria tribe. In his youth, the world government used him as a test subject, conducting various experiments on him, causing him to suffer unimaginable pain and torture. That dark experience, like a nightmare, etched itself deeply into his heart, instilling in him a deep hatred for the world government. It was precisely because of this intense hatred that he chose to follow Kato. He believed that Kato possessed a power unmatched by others, a force capable of opposing the world government. He firmly believed that by following Kato, he would have the opportunity to overthrow the world government, making those once arrogant and reckless individuals pay the price, and ultimately achieve justice for himself and his suffering people. Weiss didn't consider Jin's complex emotions, nor would he show any mercy because of his pitiful background. Having chosen to become a pirate, one must be prepared to be killed. This is the unchanging law of survival on this ocean. The strong prey on the weak, and only the fittest survive. No one will show mercy because of your past misfortune. He slowly scanned the 8 ancient devil fruit users pinned down by gravity, thinking to himself, these are prime materials. His lips curled up slightly, revealing a subtle smile that seemed remarkably cold. A special portal opened. Black Dwarf emerged with his people. Imprison all the pirates on the island in the dungeon. Yes, Black Dwarf replied in a muffled voice. Chapter 339 Battlefield Transfer. Kato, in his fierce battle with Kuzan, had keenly noticed the movements here. Seeing his men restrained, abducted, and captured one by Weiss, his eyes, already blazing with rage, now blazed with even more fury. Get out of here, Kato roared with a deafening roar, shaking the air around him. He channeled all his strength into his mace and struck Kuzan with all his might. The blow struck Kuzan with immense force. Kuzan struggled to block, but the overwhelming force sent him reeling several steps back. Kato seized the moment Kuzan retreated and, like a cannonball, launched himself over him, leaping straight into the air. His figure arced through the air before hovering steadily in mid-air. He gripped the mace tightly and began to spin rapidly, its rotation shrouded in a thick halo of domineering aura. Kato raised his mace, shrouded in Conqueror's haki, high above his head. Descend to the third world, invite Naraku. With the force of thunder, the mace slammed down at Weiss. Weiss remained calm, snapping her fingers calmly. Countless chains radiating golden light stretched out from all directions into the air like snakes emerging from a cave, wrapping around Kato at breakneck speed. This thing, Kato's muscles instantly swelled, his toned muscles bulging like small hills, veins bulging as he tried to break free of the chains with brute force. However, to his surprise, the harder he struggled, the tighter the chains tightened, digging into his skin. Kato summoned armament haki, attempting to strengthen his defenses and break free from the chains, but even then, the golden chains remained unmoved. Weiss's lips curled slightly in a confident smile. He extended his finger, directing the chains like a graceful conductor, to dance through the air. Under his control, the chains methodically coiled around Kato, layer after layer, gradually enveloping his massive form into a golden cocoon. Roar! Kato roared angrily to the heavens, dispersing the layers of clouds in the sky. The entire island of Onigashima trembled violently at the resounding roar. The enormous blue dragon danced swiftly through the air, its body still entwined in layers of golden chains. The chains gleamed dazzlingly in the sunlight, creating a strange and stunning contrast with the dragon's massive and majestic form. Fire Dragon Torch! Kato's fury burned to a climax, and he unleashed this powerful attack. Instantly, a blazing crimson flame erupted from the massive dragon's form, its intensity intense. The surrounding air distorted under the intense heat of the flames, and anything touched by them instantly melted with a sizzling sound. But to Kato's astonishment, the golden chain remained unharmed in the face of the all-melting flames, showing no sign of damage. Kato circled in the air several times, his anger and resentment growing stronger. He adjusted his stance and swooped down at high speed. The massive dragon head, like a falling meteor, slammed into Weiss with devastating force. As he dove, he tightly wrapped his Conqueror's haki around his head. The force of this attack was immense. A successful strike would have shattered the entirety of Onigashima. Yet, Weiss remained calm in the face of such a powerful attack, his response remarkably simple. Many obstacles, in an instant, The entire space became thick with stickiness. Kato felt as if he were in a sea of molasses. Every inch he descended felt like countless hands desperately pulling him down from behind. The immense resistance made his movements extremely difficult, and his one swift dive slowed dramatically, almost to the point where he could barely move. Zam seized this perfect opportunity and attacked without hesitation. Ice Time Capsule, a capsule emitting an icy aura, flew towards Kato. The moment it made contact, a powerful freezing force erupted, freezing him once again. The majestic and menacing azure dragon was now encased in a thick layer of ice, hovering in the air like a gigantic ice sculpture. However, due to the residual warmth of Kato's flames and his own immense strength, the ice was melting at a visible rate. "This battle can now be concluded," Weiss said calmly, yet with undeniable confidence. He vanished from his position in an instant, then teleported to the top of the massive azure dragon's head. The size disparity between the two was simply too great. The azure dragon's massive form was like a towering mountain, while Weiss, standing atop it, was a tiny speck of dust. Weiss chanted an obscure spell. As she did so, a miraculous event occurred. Kato's body began to tremble uncontrollably, and as if squeezed by an invisible force, his massive form slowly began to shrink. Kato struggled desperately, trying to resist the force, but to no avail. The force surged like a surging tide, unstoppable. Eventually, he was forced out of azure dragon form and returned to his human form. "What did you do?" Kato stared at Weiss with wide eyes, stunned and furious. He couldn't fathom what uncanny trick Weiss had used to force him out of azure dragon form. This move, Weiss had developed after deeply studying the dark fruit, was specifically designed to combat devil fruit users, and it was incredibly effective. This move temporarily seals the Esper's fruit ability for a limited period of time. Weiss ignored Kato's roar and immediately cast the Imperious Curse. Kato felt a divinely powerful force slowly invading the depths of his soul, as if invisible hands were wantonly stirring his spirit, attempting to control it. As an old friend of Big Mom's, Kato had naturally accumulated considerable experience in dealing with various dangers during his long career as a pirate, and was not completely defenseless against mental attacks. He immediately mobilized his Conqueror's Haki, attempting to use this powerful power to resist Weiss's Imperious Curse. The moment the Conqueror's Haki was released, the air around them seemed to freeze, and an invisible pressure spread outward. Weiss could clearly sense the resistance from Kato's Conqueror's Haki. Interesting, Weiss raised an eyebrow slightly, increasing her magical power output, sending a steady stream of it into Kato's soul. Thus began a thrilling battle on the spiritual and mental levels. On the surface, everything around them remained calm, devoid of the smoke and noise of battle. However, in reality, the ferocity of this battle far exceeded ordinary imagination. Physical injuries might be healed through various means, but once the soul was severely damaged, the consequences were unimaginable, potentially even causing a person's soul to completely dissipate, disappearing from this world forever. Chapter 340 End? A solemn expression covered Kato's face like a dark cloud. His thick eyebrows knitted together, forming deep furrows across his forehead. Beads of sweat, as large as beads, rolled down his broad forehead like broken strings, winding down the contours of his cheeks, gathering at his chin, and dripping to his feet. Pain surged like a tide. His former arrogance, as if he could trample everything under his feet, was now completely gone, replaced by a deep struggle and powerlessness. For Kato, battling a magician of unfathomable power in the realm of mind and soul was undoubtedly a thorny and dangerous journey. As the battle dragged on, he gradually realized the serious mistakes in his strategy and response. He tried with all his might to escape the battle. However, time, like a merciless executioner, had now trapped him in this desperate situation. It was too late, and he could only watch helplessly as he sank deeper and deeper into the quagmire. Beat the pheasant. Kuzan seized this fleeting opportunity and launched a surprise attack. The sudden attack was the straw that broke the camel's back. Kato's nearly crumbling defenses crumbled completely. Under the combined attack of psychic and physical attacks, Kato finally succumbed and lost consciousness. Weiss cautiously used the Mind Stone to completely erase Kato's thoughts and consciousness. In an instant, Kato's eyes, once filled with wisdom and dominance, became empty and lifeless, like two stagnant pools of water, motionless. Only a husk lay there, silently at Weiss's mercy. Witnessing this scene, Kuzan couldn't help but sigh. Falling into Weiss's hands was not something to be thankful for. It's easy to imagine that in the near future, a new seraph, modeled after Kato, will be born. In every corner of Onigashima, Black Dwarf led his people to clean up the battlefield. Like hungry wolves searching for prey, they meticulously searched every corner for potential trophies. Oni Island was rich in resources, especially Quinn's laboratory, which housed numerous bizarre, powerful, and priceless machines, as well as a variety of rare and precious research materials. "You stay here," Weiss's voice was low but undeniable, as he briefly instructed Kuzan. Then, like a fleeting flash of light, he vanished from the scene. A mythical beast awaited him in the Flower City. By the time Weiss' lightning-fast figure reached the Flower City, it was already engulfed in a raging sea of fire. The flames mercilessly devoured the houses and buildings crisscrossing the streets. Thick smoke, like a gigantic black dragon, spiraled upward, filling the sky and shrouding the entire Flower City in a gloomy, acrid haze. The pungent odor, like the breath of a demon, permeated every corner of the air. Law and his men were engaged in a battle with Kurazumi Orochi's men, a battle now raging across the Flower Capital. Their meticulously planned assault aimed to swiftly storm the castle tower, capture Orochi, and end the conflict. However, they could never have anticipated the unscrupulous nature of Orochi, so callously dragging innocent civilians into the fray. The Flower Capital was instantly plunged into utter chaos and panic, the cries and screams of the people mingling like a living hell. "Quick, protect me and get out of here." Kurazumi Orochi's face was filled with panic, his grotesque features distorted and grotesque in terror. His cowardly nature was fully revealed, his voice trembling with sobs. He possessed no real talent, having only barely ascended to the position of Wano country's general through his alliance with the Beast's pirates. He acted with dominance, but when faced with danger, his true colors were instantly revealed. Law's face was gloomy as he pursued him relentlessly. He moved with incredible speed, darting through the streets and houses. Weiss made no effort to conceal his presence. Law's keen observation Haki quickly detected Weiss's presence. According to his carefully crafted plan, the Flower City should have been completely under control by now, but now it was in such chaos. Law couldn't help but feel a surge of frustration and humiliation. If he couldn't even defeat Kurazumi Orochi, he would truly lose face in front of Weiss. Kurazumi Orochi's men all wore a look of determination, knowing their fate was tied to Kurazumi Orochi's. If Kurazumi Orochi failed, they would be doomed as well. They fought desperately to resist Law's attacks. Kurazumi Orochi, however, relied on the strange and unique ability of Yamada no Orochi. Every time Law swung his sword and severed his head, a new head would instantly grow from the severance, as if possessing an endless vitality. Luo chopped off Kurazumi Orochi's head several times, but failed to slay it completely. This only intensified Luo's rage, and his attacks intensified. Weiss stood by, watching silently, then slowly raised his arms. 100-meter-tall wall rose from the ground. Like an impenetrable barrier, it tightly encircled the Flower City, preventing anyone from escaping and completely cutting off any escape routes for Kurazumi Orochi and his men. After several fierce battles, Luo finally seized a rare opportunity and successfully captured Kurazumi Orochi. Meanwhile, Kurazumi Orochi's men, decimated by Luo's fierce attacks, lay scattered on the ground, their blood staining the streets of the Flower City red. With this, the battle was finally drawing to a close. Weiss cleared his throat slightly, and his voice instantly echoed throughout Wano. "From now on, Wano will be ruled by me." His words, through magic, imprinted directly into the minds of every Wano citizen, causing them to involuntarily pause. Weiss then issued several orders. The citizens of Wano stood there in bewilderment, their hearts filled with confusion and shock, their minds resonating with questions. Had Kato and Kurazumi Orochi been defeated? This suddenly appearing outsider actually wanted to rule Wano? They didn't know what the future held for them, new hope or deeper suffering. At this moment, the entire Wano nation was plunged into an unprecedented state of confusion and anxiety. Chapter 341 Afterwards. 7 days have passed since the battle ended. Under Violet's command and coordination, the reconstruction of the Flower Capital is proceeding intensively, and is now halfway complete. Workers bustled through the streets, carrying construction materials and repairing damaged buildings and facilities. However, despite the apparent orderliness of things, the people of Wano country felt no reassurance. After all, they were now ruled by a complete outsider. The uncertainty of the future filled everyone with worry and fear. Some, unable to endure this inner torment, secretly fled the Flower Capital. They packed their simple belongings and, under cover of darkness, quietly made their way out. Unopposed, more and more people fled. Upon learning of the flower capital situation, the daimyo of Kuri, Nozomi, Usagi, Hakume, and Suzugo quickly united to form a joint army. These daimyo did not dare to confront Kurozumi Orochi, the legitimate heir to the shogunate and backed by Kato. But now the situation was different. Facing Weiss, the foreign invader, justice clearly stood on their side. They firmly believed that with their own strength and prestige, they could drive Weiss out of Wano country and restore its former peace and tranquility. Thus, under the call-in organization of the daimyo, they quickly assembled an army of 10,000. The army marched towards the flower capital with great momentum. While the allied forces, still full of ambition, had not yet reached the flower capital, they encountered 8 seraphs who had been waiting there in full battle formation. Seeing only 8 seemingly childish children blocking their way, the allied warriors' faces showed scornful ridicule. These few brats, they thought, dared to block the path of their 10,000-man army? It was simply presumptuous. The warriors' vigilance instantly dissipated, replaced by contempt and arrogance. However, the seraphim paid no heed to the warriors' jeers. Their orders were to halt the advance of the army, and without further ado, they charged directly at the warriors. The warriors, still dismissing the children, viewed this as a simple battle, even plotting to demonstrate their prowess in battle, something they could boast about to their fellow villagers. But once the battle began, they realized their mistake. The seraphim's attacks were swift and fierce, each strike imbued with immense power and precision. With the effortless ease of chopping melons and vegetables, they easily pierced the warriors' defenses, leaving the army in disarray and disarray. The warriors were horrified to find themselves powerless against the children. Their companions fell one after another, their blood splattering like a fountain, quickly staining the surrounding ground a glaring crimson. In this horrific battle, most of the samurai perished instantly. Only a few hundred, in utter panic and confusion, managed to escape, seizing the gaps between the seraphim's attacks. They fled, gripped by fear like a demon. Their former ambition vanished, replaced by a deep fear of the seraphim and a despair for the future. This horrific battle was broadcast live, the footage beamed to every corner of Wano country via snails. From bustling towns to remote villages, the people of Wano witnessed firsthand the merciless slaughter of their once proud samurai. How could this happen? An old man's eyes widened in disbelief, his cane trembling slightly with shock. Wano country is finished. A young mother cried desperately, her child in her arms, her eyes filled with helplessness and fear. The entire country of Wano was instantly enveloped in a gloomy haze. The horrific scene shattered the once steadfast confidence of the people of Wano. The 5 daimyo were equally stunned. They had confidently believed that their meticulously organized, mighty army would successfully reach the flower capital and engage Weiss in a fierce battle. Even if they couldn't defeat him outright, they would at least be able to fight. But they had never imagined that their army would be so easily annihilated. Their once lofty ambitions were shattered like bubbles, dissipating without a trace. For a moment, they were in a state of deep panic, their minds blank, completely lost. They could only watch helplessly as the situation unfolded in a direction that was extremely unfavorable to them. Weiss had issued a bounty on the 5 daimyo's heads, regardless of life or death. The high bounty was like a huge magnet, attracting everyone's attention. For some in Wano, who ruled the country, seemed less important than claiming the lucrative reward. As a result, the once almighty and respected daimyo were instantly reduced to destitute victims, hunted down and pursued by the bounty hunters. Their former glory was gone, replaced by a state of despair and desolation, like frightened birds, hiding from place to place across Wano country. These daimyo had long established themselves in Wano country, and as local tyrants, they knew every mountain, river, and hidden corner. With the dedicated assistance of their loyal subordinates, they barely evaded the relentless onslaught of capture. Forced to retreat into the deep mountains and forests, they lived a disparate existence, constantly fearing discovery. Meanwhile, Kazuki Oden's retainers, who had been in hiding for nearly 20 years, suddenly revived. Driven by loyalty to their former master and discontent with the current state of Wano country, they formed a final resistance group. Led by Kazuki Oden's daughter, Murasaki, they successfully gathered like-minded individuals. However, Kazuki Oden's seemingly idiotic actions, coupled with Kurozumi Orochi's 20-year-long campaign of deliberate discrediting, left him with a poor impression on the people of Wano. Under these circumstances, the once prominent Kazuki family's reputation and standing in Wano plummeted, becoming infamous. Upon hearing that the Kazuki family was organizing the rebellion, many ordinary citizens expressed little support or hope, but instead expressed suspicion and wait-and-see attitude. Chapter 342 1 year. After experiencing initial turmoil and uncertainty, the people of Wano were gradually surprised to discover that under the rule of Weiss, an outsider, their lives had undergone unexpected changes. Gone were the once numerous and burdensome taxes, a heavy burden lifted from the people's shoulders, and the pressure of life suddenly eased. Factories that had once caused severe pollution due to overproduction had ceased operations, leaving the sky bluer, the rivers clear again, and fresh air filling every corner. People no longer had to endure the acrid fumes and polluted environment. Even more gratifying was that the food markets were more abundant and affordable than before, making it easier for ordinary people to fill their stomachs and no longer worry about food. Over time, the people of Wano gradually accepted Weiss's rule and even began to appreciate this life. After all, for them, a stable and peaceful life was the most important thing. However, due to Wano's long-standing policy of isolation, the events unfolding within the land were difficult to spread across the vast ocean. The outside world remained oblivious to the events unfolding in Wano country, pursuing their own interests and dreams as usual on the turbulent seas. However, as the days passed, no members of the Beast Pirates were seen at sea for a long time, and this unusual phenomenon finally caught the attention of some perceptive individuals. Finally, one day, the front page of the World Economic Daily reported a bombshell, instantly detonating the entire ocean. The next Pirate King, Wes Erwin. This news came like a bolt from the blue, shocking the entire pirate world. It dawned on everyone that the Beast Pirates had been completely wiped out. While this outcome was unexpected, upon reflection, it seemed reasonable. After all, given the previous example of Big Mom's pirates being defeated, everyone was shocked, but not too shocked. However, almost everyone agreed that Weiss was only a short step away from becoming Pirate King. If he could successfully reach the legendary Raftal and find the great treasure, he would surely become the new king of the sea, ushering in a new era. The Navy and the world government, upon learning of Weiss's actions and the immense power he now displayed, were filled with concern. Weiss, like a rapidly rising, menacing storm, had become a formidable challenge they had to contend with. The situation became even more tense and complex after the Navy made the crucial strategic decision to relocate its headquarters to the New World. Akainu, a man of unwavering resolve, dedicated to the extermination of pirates, was now deeply troubled. Everyone eagerly anticipated the Navy's decisive action against Weiss. After all, the Navy had always represented the force of justice on the seas, and facing such a formidable pirate force, it was only natural that they would take action. However, surprisingly, the Navy remained silent, leaving Akainu with a deep headache. One doesn't know the value of daily necessities until they've mastered the household. When he was just an admiral, he focused solely on charging into battle and annihilating pirates, free from the tedious details of daily life. But now, having ascended to the position of Grand Admiral, he's truly grasped just how difficult it is. On the one hand, he faces constant scrutiny from the five elders. As the core figures of power in the world government, they constantly demand and criticize the actions of the Navy. If the Navy's performance fails to meet their expectations, Akainu inevitably bears the immense pressure from above. On the other hand, he must carefully balance the interests of the various factions within the Navy. The Navy itself is already divided into distinct factions with their own ideologies and demands. Keeping everyone working together is no easy task, and even a moment's carelessness can lead to internal conflict and strife. Old Sengoku, seemingly bored after retirement, would occasionally tease Akainu. Whenever he saw Akainu fretful, Sengoku couldn't help but tease him, saying things like, now you know how tough it is to be Grand Admiral, don't you? Akainu was utterly enraged, his rage flaring up every time, yet he couldn't do anything about Sengoku, so he could only secretly simmer down in frustration. However, the most critical issue facing the Navy right now was a severe shortage of manpower. Ain, arguing with Akainu's philosophy, chose to leave the Navy, where he had served for so many years, and parted ways. Akainu, on the other hand, relied on his military exploits and unwavering style to ascend to the rank of Grand Admiral. As a result, of the once mighty three admirals, only Kizaru remained, holding the fort. Furthermore, veterans like Sengoku and Garp had gradually receded into the background. On the other hand, since the end of the Battle of Marineford, pirates had sprung up like mushrooms, their numbers increasing exponentially, and among them were some of the most powerful and ambitious. The Navy, facing both the increasing prevalence of pirates and a shortage of manpower, was struggling to carry out its various missions. Frequently caught between tasks, the Navy found itself in a difficult position. To address this precarious situation, the world government, after deliberation, decided to launch a massive conscription drive. This recruitment campaign was exceptional. Traditional criteria, such as background and military achievements, were completely abandoned, with a focus solely on individual merit. Anyone with sufficient skill, regardless of background or military achievements, would be awarded the appropriate rank and enter the Navy. This move sparked considerable controversy within the Navy. Those who had fought in the Navy for years, earning merit through countless battles and risking their lives, gradually earning seniority and rising in rank, felt a sense of discontent. A newcomer, with such limited skills, could become their own commander. What then stood in the way of all their hard-earned achievements? But no matter how much they complained, everyone knew that this was a decision made by the five elders. As the core power layer of the world government, their words were orders, and the Navy had no choice but to obey them. Even if they were dissatisfied, they could only accept this reality helplessly. Chapter 343 The Straw Hat Pirates. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, a year has passed. This year has been a bustling year for the New World. Pirates, newly ambitious and embracing the mysterious waters of the New World, teeming with danger and opportunity, have engaged in fierce, almost frenzied battles for the territories once held by the Whitebird and Big Mom pirates. Every day, a glance at the newspaper reveals news of once renowned pirates, feared on the seas, being defeated by fledgling rookies. These shocking scenes have heightened the turmoil in the pirate world. Even the ever-powerful and renowned Red Hair pirates have been no exception to this chaotic situation, facing frequent attacks from other pirate groups. Pirates eager to profit from the Red Hair pirates and achieve fame and fortune, completely disregarding their formidable strength, launched attacks like moths to a flame, forcing the pirates to remain vigilant and respond to these relentless challenges. However, amidst the chaos and strife of this new world, Dressrosa and Wano, ruled by Weiss, stood as tranquil havens, isolated from the turmoil of the pirates outside. Under Weiss's protection, these two regions enjoyed a peaceful and tranquil existence, their people living in peace and tranquility, unaffected by the frenzied pirate warfare outside. However, this tranquility was short-lived and would soon be shattered. On Punk Hazard Island, after a thrilling battle, the Straw Hat Pirates successfully defeated Caesar. After the battle, everyone was overwhelmed with joy, and a grand banquet was held on the island to celebrate this hard-earned victory. Momonosuke and Kinemon also joined in the joyful atmosphere. They sat together with the Straw Hat Pirates, their faces beaming with joy, savoring the euphoria of their hard-earned victory. Everyone shared anecdotes from the battle, and laughter and cheers mingled, echoing across the island. Caesar, Vergo, and Monet were bound and thrown into a corner. They had all sustained serious injuries from the fierce battle with the Straw Hat Pirates, and each looked utterly battered. Vergo's once upright figure was now hunched, his clothes tattered and blood-stained, his face covered in bruises and scrapes. Monet's appearance was no better, her beautiful face now shone with fatigue and pain. Her pristine white feathers were disheveled, her wings drooped limply, and she bore several visible wounds, faintly oozing blood. Ever since Doflamingo was killed by Weiss, Vergo and Monet had made revenge their primary goal, desperately searching for an opportunity to exact their revenge. However, they knew Weiss was too powerful, a formidable figure who had defeated even the likes of Big Mom and Kato. They had privately considered the possibility that even if they cultivated for 10 lifetimes, they would still be no match for Weiss. However, their deep hatred was too much to bear, so they placed their last hope on Caesar. They believed that Caesar, a brilliant and insane scientist, might be able to develop a weapon powerful enough to defeat Weiss. When Caesar heard their request, he nearly burst out laughing. A weapon capable of killing Weiss? That was sheer fantasy. If Caesar truly had the ability to develop such a weapon, why would he remain confined to this remote island of Punk Hazard? He would have long since dominated the seas with such an invincible weapon. However, Caesar knew he was no match for Vergo and Monet. If they turned ruthless, he might even be dead. Helplessly, he gritted his teeth and agreed, figuring he'd take things one step at a time and just get by. But they never expected that before Caesar's research could yield any results, they'd be defeated by the Straw Hat Pirates, shattering their last glimmer of hope for revenge. Monet, Thinking of this, couldn't help but burst into tears of despair, tears streaming down his cheeks and onto the ground. Virgo sat cross-legged in silence, his eyes filled with deep despair. Both of them had already given up, believing that since revenge was hopeless, life seemed meaningless. Here, Monet lost himself in despair, and Virgo remained silent, when a gentle voice broke the slightly subdued atmosphere. Sanji slowly approached, carrying a bowl of steaming hot soup, and handed it over. Monet slowly raised her head, a hint of confusion and sadness still lingering in her eyes. She looked at Sanji, her expression expressionless. Sanji tilted his head slightly, a self-assured expression on his face. With a confident, almost smug grin, he said, "As a chef, I won't let anyone go hungry." He firmly believed in his principle as a chef, not even enemies should be allowed to starve. Caesar, standing nearby, saw this, his eyes suddenly lit up. He quickly raised his hand and eagerly called out, "Give me a bowl." He had been starving for a long time, completely ignoring his current status as a prisoner. "You bastard, I'm going to starve you to death." Sanji's rage instantly flared at Caesar's words. The smile on his face vanished, revealing his sharp teeth. Caesar shuddered at Sanji's roar and quickly curled up into a ball, his eyes filled with fear as he muttered, "Stingy. It's just a bowl of soup," but he didn't dare say it out loud, fearing it would anger Sanji and earn him a beating. Monet glanced at the bowl of soup briefly before looking away, completely uninterested. "Huh?" Sanji exhaled a soft smoke ring and shook his head helplessly. Then he bent down, set the bowl on the ground, and said, his tone slightly softer, "It won't taste good when it's cold." With that, he turned and returned to the bustling banquet, quickly joining his companions in the laughter and chatter. Only the steaming bowl of soup remained, emitting a faint aroma. Chapter 344. Next stop. "Kinemon, where are you going next?" Luffy stared at Kinemon with wide, curious eyes, brimming with interest in the samurai from Wano. I am. Kinemon faltered at Luffy's question, his face a troubled expression. He longed to find a suitable excuse, but when he thought of the Straw Hat Pirates' recent help in defeating his enemies and their debt of gratitude, he felt a deep sense of reluctance to deceive them. He was caught in a dilemma, and the words on his lips remained stagnant. "Idiot. Stop prying into other people's private affairs." Nami, upon seeing this, swung her fist and smashed it against Luffy's head. Bang! A large bump instantly appeared on Luffy's head. Luffy clutched the bump, thrashing around in pain. The others around him burst into laughter at Luffy's hilarious antics, lightening the once solemn atmosphere. Watching this, Kinemon felt a growing sense of guilt. He felt he shouldn't hide anything from his benefactor, but his mission didn't allow for any complacency, which was why he was so conflicted when faced with Luffy's questioning. "Ignore that idiot," Zoro observed Kinemon's conflict. He didn't ask any further questions, silently handing Kinemon a bowl of sake. "I'm so sorry." Kinemon accepted the drink, his face thick with apology. He lowered his head, not wanting to meet Zoro's eyes, his guilt towards the Straw Hat Pirates intensifying. Ha. "Don't worry about it," Luffy said with a nonchalant smile, rubbing the bump on his head. Right now, the Straw Hat Pirates' primary concern was where to go next. The new world was in utter chaos, with various factions vying for control. Pirates engaged in fierce battles for territory and treasure daily. Danger lurked around every corner, requiring extreme caution with every step. Luffy's aspiration remains unwavering, to become Pirate King. To achieve this, he must reach Raftel. However, to reach Raftel, he must gather 4 historical landmarks. However, adding to everyone's stress, 2 of these landmarks are currently in the hands of Weiss. The prospect of facing a near-invincible opponent like Weiss, while Luffy maintains a fearless and determined demeanor, weighs heavily on everyone else's hearts, a weight so heavy they find it almost suffocating. Weiss stands as a towering mountain, an impenetrable, insurmountable obstacle, standing in the way of all aspiring pirate kings. His immense power is undeniable, even masters of the sea, like Big Mom and Kato, have fallen before him. Facing such a formidable foe, the mere thought of him fills many with despair, making the seemingly unattainable title of Pirate King seem even more elusive. Iron-headed Luffy didn't care. His fearless, relentless nature meant he didn't even consider the strength of his opponent. "No matter who the opponent is, I'm determined to become Pirate King." Luffy shouted the words he'd said countless times, as if nothing could stop him once he'd set his sights on this goal. And in truth, he meant it every time. They weren't just random slogans, but his deepest, burning dream, a conviction he was willing to sacrifice everything, even his life, for. Naive brat, Vergo scoffed at Luffy's boast. He found Luffy's ideas childish and ridiculous, completely unrealistic fantasies. What are you so proud of, a captive? Sanji, watching from the sidelines, snapped at Vergo. He was truly fed up with Vergo trying to gain the upper hand in words even though he was already a prisoner. Vergo remained composed, completely oblivious to Sanji's scolding. You think you can become Pirate King just by boasting? His tone was filled with doubt. Becoming Pirate King, in his opinion, was far from easy. It required overcoming countless hardships and defeating countless powerful enemies. It wasn't something Luffy could achieve simply by spouting slogans. I'm serious, Luffy said, a rare moment of seriousness on his face. His usual carefree smile was now etched in his eyes, an undeniable resolve. He gazed intently at Vergo, as if declaring his resolve. Vergo choked at Luffy's earnestness, momentarily unsure how to retort. A brat who can't even kill his enemies can't possibly become Pirate King. The world of pirates is inherently cruel. To reach the top requires ruthless and decisive killing, showing no mercy to their enemies. The Straw Hat Pirates had just arrived in the New World and were still unfamiliar with everything. Fortunately, they still had acquaintances in the New World. Luffy possessed Ace's life card. Following the card's guidance, the Straw Hat Pirates finally reunited with Ace after a 2-year absence after several days of sailing. Upon Luffy's arrival, the Whitebird Pirates warmly welcomed him and immediately held a grand banquet to celebrate this rare reunion. At the banquet, everyone was filled with laughter, toasting, and enjoying themselves to the fullest. The tables were filled with delicious food, the wine flowed endlessly, and the cacophony of music and laughter mingled, creating a lively atmosphere. Everyone was immersed in the revelry, staying up all night. As the night of revelry wore on, Luffy knew it was time to say goodbye. After all, he had his own adventures to pursue. Luffy had always considered Ace a rival. Although they shared a deep bond, each possessed his own unique determination and perseverance in their pursuit of the Pirate King title, each aiming to ascend to the throne through their own strength. When Luffy heard about Ace's next destination, a flash of excitement instantly flashed in his eyes. In fact, the other members of the Straw Hat Pirates were also curious. They looked at each other and saw the same idea in each other's eyes. Sanji calmly analyzed, this is an opportunity to get to know the enemy in advance. Although Nami was a little worried about whether they would encounter any danger, she knew that it was useless to object when she saw her companions eager to try. Zoro had a calm expression, with his hand on the hilt of his sword. Since it has been decided, let's go. No matter what happens, we will just deal with it when the time comes. Luffy couldn't wait to jump on the bow of the ship, shouting, let's go, let's go. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 345 Meeting. Is this Dressrosa? So bustling, Nami stood on the street, her wide eyes surveying her surroundings with curiosity. Her face was filled with wonder as she gazed at the beautifully decorated shops and the bustling crowds of tourists. I never thought there was a place like this in the New World. It's like heaven, Sanji said, his eyes drawn to the graceful and voluptuous dancers swaying on the street, his nose bleeding. Zoro, on the other hand, was fascinated by the arena, wondering what powerful figures might be within. The rest of the group was also deeply astounded by the prosperity of Dressrosa. After all, their adventures in the New World had been filled with endless fierce battles, every day a tense and thrilling one. Even when they had been with the Whitebird Pirates, it was no different. Since Whitebird's death, the Whitebird Pirates' once powerful intimidation was gone, no longer able to deter the other ambitious pirates. This is the headquarters of the Four Emperors. No one dares to cause trouble here. Marco couldn't help but feel a sense of emotion as he took in the bustling yet orderly scene before him. Back then, when Whitebird was in power, wasn't it just like this? With his immense strength and prestige, he made all forces fearless. Just as everyone was leisurely strolling through the streets, admiring the unique scenery of Dressrosa, a familiar voice suddenly rang out, Alala. Without warning, Kuzan appeared before them. The Straw Hat Pirates were instantly on guard, their expressions suddenly becoming serious, their eyes fixed on Kuzan with wary eyes. Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji prepared for battle, crouching slightly, ready to attack. 2 years ago, they had been easily crushed by Cusin. The feeling of powerlessness was still deeply etched in their minds, leaving a deep psychological scar. Now, facing Cusin, they dared not be careless. "Relax, I'm not a marine now. I have no reason to attack you." Cusin observed the men's fearful expressions, a faint smile on his face, his tone calm. "What?" Luffy's eyes widened in disbelief. He had no idea what was going on. "Idiot. What were you doing while we were exchanging intelligence?" Nami gritted her teeth in anger, baring them at Luffy with a look of disapproval. Luffy pretended not to hear, scratching his head, and continued to stare at Cusin with confusion. "You've grown a lot." Cusin paid no attention to the minor incident. His gaze swept over Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, and he could see at a glance that their strength had improved significantly compared to 2 years ago. "Want to give it a try?" Zoro, always belligerent, couldn't help but challenge. His hand was already on the hilt of his sword, ready to draw without hesitation at the slightest movement. "Let's not fight here." Cusin's expression suddenly grew serious. He looked at everyone with a stern gaze and said slowly, "You'll die." The Straw Hat Pirates shuddered at this. Nami, Chopper, and Usopp instinctively hid behind Zoro, their faces filled with fear. "What do you mean?" Sanji frowned and snuffed out a cigarette. "It's the rules. In Dressrosa, force is only allowed in the arena. Violators are sentenced to death," Ace reminded him at the right time. "How overbearing." Zoro couldn't help but grumble, his brow furrowing slightly. He felt a little dissatisfied with Dressrosa's strict and somewhat unyielding rules. When sailing on the sea, the decision to act depends on one's own judgment and the current situation. How could one be dictated to by such arbitrary rules? Luffy's resentment rose again at this, and he opened his mouth to retort. But before he could say anything, the cowardly trio covered his mouth. The three of them covered their hands while nervously winking at Luffy, their words clearly saying, "Don't cause any more trouble. Your life is at stake." Luffy struggled a few times, but seeing no way free, he glared angrily, swallowing his words for the moment. Then, Cusin's gaze passed over the others, finally landing on Robin. A gentle smile crossed his face, and he whispered, "Long time no see, Nico." "Robin, long time no see," Robin replied with a slight bow, a heartfelt smile on her face. She had drifted on this vast ocean for so long, enduring countless hardships and dangers. Now, to find a sense of belonging with the Straw Hat Pirates was truly a blessing and a joy. Cusin saw this rare sense of security in her smile. "You've found a good place to call home," Cusin sighed, then turned and walked in one direction, saying, "Follow me." And so, led by Cusin, the group crossed the bustling streets and arrived at the arena. The arena was bustling with activity, the roars and cheers of the audience echoing as a fierce battle unfolded in the arena below. Then, led by Cusin, they entered the arena's private room. When the door opened, the large room was empty, revealing only one person. Weiss sat in a comfortable chair, intently watching the fight below. "Have you brought the stuff?" Weiss asked calmly, her eyes still fixed on the frenzied fight below. Hearing this, Marco silently stepped forward and carefully removed 3 boxes from his arms. The 3 boxes slowly floated upwards, flying towards Weiss. Once they landed safely on the table beside Weiss, Weiss opened them and examined them one by one. His eyes scanned the items within, then he nodded slightly and whispered, "Not bad." 3 scattered nature-type devil fruits lay quietly within the boxes, their unusual color and unique patterns betraying their extraordinary value. These 3 devil fruits were used by the Whitebird Pirates to exchange for Whitebird's body. In order to collect them, the Whitebird Pirates put in a lot of effort and almost exhausted the funds accumulated by the entire pirate group over the years. The members ran around, gathered information, and experienced countless hardships and dangers. During this period, they also encountered the coveting and robbery of many other pirate groups. It was not easy to get these 3 devil fruits together, just to exchange them for the body of their respected father, Whitebird, so that he could return to his roots. It was also their last wish. At this moment, Marco and others' eyes were full of expectation, hoping that Weiss would abide by the agreement and return Whitebird's body to them. Chapter 346 Accident. "Dad's body?" Ace asked expectantly, his eyes filled with anxiety and nervousness. He stared intently at Weiss, hoping to retrieve his father's remains as soon as possible so he could rest in peace. "Don't worry, I won't break my promise," Weiss said, casually throwing a ball. Ace quickly reached out to catch it, his face filled with confusion. subconsciously examining the ball. Ace leaned in closer and saw a shrunken version of Whitebird inside the ball. The familiar face, the iconic white beard. Dad, Ace and the others were instantly overcome with emotion, their eyes welling with tears, their long-suppressed longing and grief now bursting forth. Just crush it, Weiss briefly explained how to use the ball. Ace was eager to return immediately to properly bury Whitebird and let his father rest in peace. But at that moment, something unexpected happened in the arena. Boom! With a resounding bang, a scarlet-haired figure pounced upon the two sparring partners like a bolt of lightning. His speed and strength were immense, and before the two could react, he knocked them to the ground and flung them a long way. This sudden attack instantly silenced the previously bustling, roaring arena. For the past 2 years, no one had dared to cause trouble in Dressrosa. Strict rules and fear of the four emperors' authority ensured a well-maintained state of order. Who is it? Which idiot? Everyone began to whisper and discuss. Eustache Kid, someone with a sharp eye, recognized the sudden appearance and shouted. Idiot! Many muttered curses, deeming Kid's actions reckless. We're going to have a good show today. Some of the audience, eager to see the excitement, were surprised but showed no sign of leaving. Instead, they excitedly anticipated what would happen next. Kid had been a supernova 2 years ago, but the ocean always produces new talents every year. To many, he seemed a bit outdated, lacking the dazzling brilliance he had when he first debuted. But unexpectedly, he would cause such a big scene today without even saying a word. Wes Erwin. Get out here. I challenge you, Kid shouted arrogantly from the center of the arena, his voice echoing throughout, full of provocation. Ha! A small pirate with a bounty of less than 500 million dares to challenge Lord Erwin. The audience erupted in laughter at Kid's words, feeling that he was simply overestimating his own abilities and daring to challenge someone as powerful as Weiss. Kid, facing the crowd's jeers, was instantly enraged, and he suddenly unleashed his conqueror's haki. A powerful, invisible aura emanated from him, radiating outward. The spectators, unable to withstand the force, collapsed to the ground. For a moment, only a handful of conscious individuals remained in the vast arena, staring at Kid in astonishment. This guy also possesses Conqueror's haki, the Straw Hats observed, their faces filled with shock. They hadn't expected Kid to possess Conqueror's haki, and their respect for him grew even stronger. Disrespectful fellow, Weiss, seated in a private room, tapped the armrest of his chair. Then, an invisible mental force emanated from him, gradually reviving the fainted spectators. What happened? The newly awakened spectators stared in bewilderment, still unsure of what had happened. It was that boy's Conqueror's haki, someone nearby, still conscious, quickly explained, and everyone finally understood what had just happened. Everyone, Wes's voice boomed over the PA system at that moment. I'm sorry to have startled you all. To make up for it, all your meals today are free. How generous, Lord Erwin. Guess we have this idiot to thank for that. The audience was instantly delighted by the news, their recent shock forgotten as they burst into praise for Wes's generosity. But Kid's words only intensified. He felt that Wes had completely ignored him. His challenge was a joke, unworthy of any attention. Get out there. Fight me, Kid roared, bending his legs and shoving the ground with such force that the arena instantly gave way. Bang! He leaped high towards the booth where Wes was. He could already see Wes's face, but Wes simply glanced at him indifferently, remaining seated without a movement. His calm demeanor made Kid feel even more slighted. There's a limit to underestimating others, Kid roared. Countless swords instantly converged around him, intertwining and merging, converging in the blink of an eye into a massive mechanical right arm. It then slammed down towards Weiss with such force that Kid intended to smash the entire private room to pieces. Weiss remained motionless, watching the mechanical arm descend, his eyes impassive. A chill washed over Kid, and his hair stood on end. He instinctively raised his right arm to defend himself. Swish, the massive mechanical arm neatly split in two, the slash still flying towards Kid. A flying slash only a swordsman could wield. Someone, recognizing the attack's power, cried out in surprise. Kid quickly covered himself with his armament haki, barely blocking the blow, but even so, a gash opened on his neck, and blood flowed instantly. It went sideways. Cyrus had appeared in the arena at some point, sword in hand, looking at Kid with a slight frown, somewhat dissatisfied that his strike hadn't hit a vital point. Asshole! Kid touched the blood on his neck and roared in anger and shock. I hit it. Kid recognized Cyrus's identity. He had never imagined that his full-strength attack would be blocked by Weiss's men. "I plan to chop off your head." Cyrus shook the blood off his sword with a nonchalant expression, as if the fierce blow just now was just an ordinary thing he had done. But the murderous intent in his words was clear and audible, making people shudder. Chapter 347 Kid Pirates. "That guy isn't a swordsman, he's a great swordsman." Zoro stared intently at Cyrus, instantly recognizing his strength. His eyes flickered with excitement. After all, becoming the world's greatest swordsman had always been Zoro's goal, and to achieve it, he had to defeat all the great swordsmen. After 2 years of training, he'd always wondered how far he'd come. Now, facing a formidable figure like Cyrus, he couldn't wait to test his own strength, unconsciously unleashing a sharp, fierce fighting spirit. Cyrus quickly sensed this, frowning slightly. He looked up in the direction of the private room, wondering, this kind of fierce fighting spirit belongs to a great swordsman. Is it Vista from the Whitebird Pirates? Opportunity. Kid, seeing Cyrus's attention momentarily distracted, saw this as a rare and opportune moment. Magnetic cone's sharp lands, swords instantly hurled themselves at Cyrus. The dense swarm of blades rained down on him with such force that it threatened to engulf him. However, Cyrus dodged the onslaught with ease, as if strolling leisurely in the garden. His movements were fluid, without a trace of panic. It was clear that his observation haki was at a high level, allowing him to predict the direction of the incoming swords and easily evade them. Furthermore, his body, strengthened by Weiss, had fully unleashed his natural talents, making his abilities rival any in the pirate world. Cyrus unhurriedly drew his sword and swung it gently. A crescent-shaped blade of sword energy whistled out, its force so sharp that it sliced through the solid arena like tofu wherever it touched. Kid manipulated the iron into a shield, seemingly quite sturdy, before blocking himself. Even so, the shield barely resisted Cyrus's powerful sword energy before being sliced through. In the instant the shield was slashed, Kid, taking advantage of the brief moment of cover, dodged past Cyrus. Without hesitation, he swung his right fist, a whistling sound. Cyrus reacted with remarkable speed, immediately raising his sword to block. Dang! Fist and sword collided with a sharp sound, sparks flying everywhere. Cyrus slashed back with lightning speed. Kid struggled to dodge, but the sword still slashed through his chest, and blood immediately oozed out. Haha! Kid, seemingly unconcerned about the wound, laughed wildly, gazing at the sword in Cyrus's hand. "Your sword is mine." He opened his right hand, activating his magnet fruit power. Cyrus's sword began to tremble uncontrollably, and in the next second, it was about to break free of Cyrus's grasp and fly into Kid's hands. For the first time, a look of surprise crossed Cyrus's face. He had clearly not expected Kid to have such a trick. However, he quickly reacted and tightened his grip on the sword. "I'm a magnet, having eaten the magnet fruit," Kid said with a smug smile. "Your sword is mine, I see." Cyrus was unhurried. He slowly focused his armament haki on the sword. In an instant, the blade was enveloped in a layer of black haki, appearing even sharper. Huh? Kid's eyes widened at the sight. He was shocked to find that he could no longer control the sword. No matter how he activated his magnetic ability, the sword remained motionless, firmly held in Cyrus's hand. "You ignorant brat. Haki can counter devil fruit abilities." Cyrus pointed his sword at Kid, his tone icy. "Your life is proof of this." Before he could finish his words, Cyrus's figure suddenly moved with astonishing speed. In the blink of an eye, he was right in front of Kid, the tip of his sword pointed at Kid's throat, ready to kill him in an instant. Damn it! Kid was startled by his sudden speed, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He knew that turning and running would be the worst option, exposing his back to the enemy and a deadly outcome. So, he gritted his teeth and fully mobilized his armament haki, concentrating it on his arms, intending to withstand Cyrus's fierce attack. Clang! With a loud bang, Cyrus's sword slashed through Kid's arms. Kid felt a tremendous force, and a sharp pain in his arms. Then, his arms were completely severed, and blood spurted out like a fountain. Ah! Kid's scream echoed through the arena, filled with pain and despair. In Kirish's opinion, Kid's armament haki was far too weak, unable to even fully radiate it. To dare challenge Weiss with such a low level was sheer fantasy. Kid, at that moment, a masked figure suddenly leaped out of the audience. It was Kira. Furious, he rushed towards Kirish, brandishing a pair of scythes. With a sharp whistling sound, the scythes blocked Kyrus's sword as it was about to strike Kid. Although Kira blocked the blow, Kyrus's force was too great. He fell to his knees with a thud, his arms trembling, clearly under immense pressure. Go! Kira gritted his teeth and shouted at Kid. He knew that Kid, now without both arms, had greatly reduced his fighting power. If he didn't escape quickly, he might even die. But how could Kid abandon Killer and flee alone? Seeing their captain in such peril, the other members of the Kid Pirates abandoned their hiding places and rushed to the ring from all corners, desperate to rescue Kid. The scene descended into chaos. Seeing this, Cyrus snorted coldly and kicked Killer with such force that he was sent flying like a rag bag, falling heavily to the ground, unable to rise. Cyrus's face was grim, and he swung his sword again. A piercing, soaring slash whistled out. The sword energy, like a silver streak, swept at breakneck speed towards the oncoming Kid Pirates. With a chilling slicing sound, the soldiers had no time to dodge or react before they were cut in two. Instantly, blood gushed from their bodies, covering the entire arena. The pungent smell of blood permeated the air. The flowing blood flowed down the arena's surface and slowly flowed into the water, staining the once clear water a glaring red. The fighting fish in the pool below the arena, normally ferocious and aggressive, became even more excited at the taste of blood. They began to swim and tumble frantically in the water, their jaws pierced with sharp teeth, biting at each other. The bloody scent ignited their inherent savagery, making the atmosphere of the arena even more bloody and brutal. Chapter 348, Team Wipeout. Damn it, Kid's eyes burned red, filled with resentment. He summoned his last ounce of strength to activate his fruit ability. A powerful magnetic force erupted from him, enveloping the entire arena and the surrounding area. Everything containing iron, small iron toys for children, utensils in the kitchen, even the roof of a distant house, was drawn to the powerful magnetism and sent flying toward Kid. These objects collided and fused in midair, quickly forming a massive iron fist larger than the arena itself. It seemed incredibly heavy and filled with destructive power. Die? Kid knew he was doomed, but he refused to die so easily. He wanted to drag someone down with him, hoping to inflict even a little damage on Cyrus. However, he had underestimated the might of the great swordsman. Cyrus, staring at the whistling fist, remained calm and composed. With a single swing of his sword, the fist instantly split in two. With a loud bang, it crashed into the water, sending a massive splash and scattering water everywhere. "We've been delayed too long," Cyrus muttered to himself. Then, with a sudden movement, a trail of afterimages left behind, he was before Kid in the blink of an eye. Before Kid could react, Cyrus swung his sword mercilessly, decapitating him with a single blow. The movement was quick and decisive, without a trace of hesitation. Kid's head fell into the water, immediately drawing a scramble from the already excited fighting fish. They gathered frantically, their maws gaping, biting each other in the fight for Kid's head. The scene was bloody and chaotic. Kira's eyes bulged, nearly bursting. His fury instantly overwhelmed his rational mind, completely ignoring the vast disparity in strength between him and Cyrus. He roared, "Kill you!" He charged at Cyrus recklessly. But Cyrus, known for his unrelenting defiance of pirates, simply raised his sword and met Kira's frantic attack with ease. With one swift strike, the sharp force of his sword struck Kira, sending him flying like a ragbag, slamming heavily against the auditorium wall with a resounding thud. A large dent had been made in the wall, and Kira's body slid down it, blood gushing from his wounds into the water. The pungent smell of blood instantly attracted several fighting fish. They leaped high from the water and pounced on Kira, their sharp teeth tearing into his body frantically, quickly dismembering him. Roar! The audience erupted in deafening cheers, completely aroused by the bloody and violent scene. Everyone revealed their bloodlust and violence, shouting out loud. "Brilliant!" As expected of Lord Cyrus, the strongest swordsman, the cheers and applause echoed throughout the arena. Cyrus bowed slightly to the audience and then turned and left the ring. Staff rushed forward to clean up the scene and repair the damaged ring. They deftly dragged the pirates' bodies one by one and dumped them directly into the pool. Seeing this, the fighting fish once again swarmed over, vying for this new food. Soon, the entire pool was dyed a blood red, and the pungent smell of blood was lingering. The Straw Hat Pirates' faces darkened as they watched the bloody and brutal scene unfold before them. Kid and his crew had been equally renowned pirates 2 years prior, collectively labeled the worst generation by the World Economic Herald. Yet, now, they were easily dispatched by Weiss's men, their bodies utterly destroyed. Weiss slowly opened her right hand and took the essence of the magnet fruit. After this turbulent period, the duel resumed, and the audience, as if nothing had happened, began to watch intently, their cheers and shouts rising once again. How cruel, Nami muttered softly. She couldn't bear to watch such a bloody and violent scene, and felt deeply disgusted by Weiss and the others' actions. Unexpectedly, her whisper caught Weiss's attention. He glanced at Nami, his eyes etched with an unfathomable depth. Nami felt Weiss's gaze, her heart skipping a beat. She instinctively took a step back, a hint of nervousness on her face. Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji saw this and quickly stepped forward, shielding Nami behind them. The three of them stared at Weiss warily, ready for any eventuality. The Straw Hat Pirates, Weiss looked at them, his curiosity long gone. In his eyes, the Straw Hats were no different from any other pirate. He said calmly, after 2 years of silence, "We're entering the new world. Is your goal to become Pirate King?" Of course, Luffy met Weiss's eyes fearlessly, his gaze unwavering. Although he could sense the immense power of the man before him, potentially his greatest enemy, he would not back down simply because of his strength. The dream of becoming Pirate King was deeply rooted in his heart, unwavering. "Give it up," Weiss said slowly, picking up the coffee from the table and taking a sip. "I'm also somewhat interested in One Piece." Weiss had actually been collecting historical landmarks for a while now and already had 2. Law had gone to Zoo and had already obtained the 3rd and was on his way back. The others stood no chance in this fight, and the Straw Hats were no exception. "No," Luffy refused firmly, his eyes devoid of any fear. He clenched his fists tightly, his stubborn determination betraying his unwavering resolve. "Really?" Weiss tapped the armrest of his chair, frowning slightly, his tone becoming more serious. "So we're enemies then?" As soon as he finished speaking, the Straw Hats felt as if a massive mountain had settled upon them, the invisible pressure barely suffocating them. Luffy hurriedly used his Conqueror's Haki to resist, but the aura exuded by Weiss was too powerful. Although Luffy tried his best, he was still suppressed and defeated. Chapter 349 Invasion. Seeing this, Ace unleashed his own Conqueror's Haki, stepping forward to join Luffy in countering Weiss's aura. But Weiss remained unfazed. Simply sitting there, gently releasing her aura, she forced Luffy and Ace back, their legs trembling slightly as they threatened to be crushed to the ground by the overwhelming force. Seeing Luffy and Ace nearly pinned to the ground by Weiss's overwhelming aura, the others panicked and rushed to help. Just then, Weiss withdrew her powerful aura. Haha, Luffy and Ace gasped for air in relief. The previous confrontation had nearly exhausted them, leaving them feeling exhausted and their legs weak. "Your guests today," Weiss said, standing up, his deceptively calm expression returning. "I can't let anyone accuse me of not knowing how to treat my guests." With that, he walked out of the private room. "All your expenses in Dressrosa are free. Consider this my compensation. We'll be enemies if we meet again," Weiss's voice echoed from outside, echoing through everyone's ears. After Weiss left, Nami's frayed nerves finally relaxed. She sank to the ground, her voice tinged with tears. That was terrifying. The tense atmosphere and Weiss's overwhelmingly powerful aura had truly frightened her. While not as frightened as Nami, the others breathed a sigh of relief. The invisible pressure had been too overwhelming, and everyone felt like they had just woken from a nightmare. No one wanted to continue the fun and return to the ship. "Do you really want to make him your enemy?" The cowardly trio, Usopp, Chopper, and Nami, still trembling with fear. Of course, Luffy, however, remained undeterred, his confidence unwavering. Nothing could stop him from becoming Pirate King, not even a foe as powerful as Weiss. "They have at least 2 coordinate texts," Ace said gravely. To reach Raftel, they needed to gather all 4 historical text signposts. A battle between them and Weiss was inevitable. Zoro showed no fear, but instead grew excited. He gripped his sword tightly, his blood boiling with a desire for war. He had nearly fought Kiris in the arena today. For him, battling powerful opponents was the only way to continuously improve his strength and move closer to becoming the world's greatest swordsman. But the risk of engaging Weiss was too great. At least for now, they had no chance of winning. The disparity in power was simply too great. After returning to the Mage Tower, Weiss devoted herself to the revelation of the magnet fruit. A month passed in a flash. During this time, the Straw Hat Pirates, the Whitebird Pirates, Zeus for Tribe, and the remnants of the Wano Samurai united. Facing a formidable foe like Weiss, individual strength was insufficient, only unity could offer a chance of success. Together they entered Wano country. "Be careful," Korematsu warned cautiously, his voice low. He was leading the group's infiltration into Wano country this time. He was extremely familiar with the terrain and knew many secret passages. Kinnaman followed behind, taking in the familiar yet unfamiliar scene, his heart filled with confusion. He simply couldn't understand why Wano country had become what it was. In Wano country today, Kurazumi Orochi had been overthrown, and the other 5 daimyo had either fled or perished. But the people were living better. Aside from the 9 red scabbards, few seemed to still cherish the Kazuki family. "The situation is serious," Korematsu briefly explained to Kinnaman. "Someone is impersonating Lord Odin," Kinnaman exclaimed, his face filled with surprise and anger. He held Kazuki Odin in the highest esteem. How could he tolerate such an impersonation? Korematsu sighed helplessly. The person impersonating Kazuki Odin was none other than Yamato, the filial daughter. During the previous incident, she had been wandering Wano country, luckily escaping catastrophic destruction. Later, she unexpectedly met the 9 red scabbards. Yamato's own strength was considerable, and it was precisely because of this that the 9 red scabbards accepted her. In this difficult situation, they had to utilize every available force. Even though Yamato was the child of their enemy, for the sake of Wano country's future, they had to temporarily put their hatred aside and unite to fight the foreign enemy. Among them, the happiest was Ace. He and Yamato were good friends, and they hadn't seen each other for 2 years. While this should have been a joyous occasion, the thought of facing a formidable foe like Weiss and the current predicament of Wano country made Ace's joy fade, and he was filled with worry. Are these the only ones left? Kinnaman felt a sense of disappointment as he looked at the group of less than 100 people before him. Momonosuke was even more timid and cowardly, even considering fleeing Wano country. His behavior was not as responsible as that of his sister, Hiyori Kazuki. But as the eldest son, Momonosuke must shoulder responsibility at this moment. After a simple ceremony, Momonosuke assumed the position of Wano's general. Then, everyone began to discuss how to expel Weiss from Wano. However, as the discussion deepened, their expressions grew increasingly solemn. Weiss's immense strength loomed like a towering mountain before them, making them increasingly uncertain the more they analyzed it. The vast disparity in power between the two sides was like an insurmountable chasm, leaving them with little hope of victory. Knock knock. Just as everyone was lost in thought, a sudden knock on the door shattered the silence. Everyone was startled, a sense of foreboding washed over them. Had they been discovered? The samurai reacted with remarkable swiftness, almost instinctively drawing their swords. Their eyes shone with vigilance and determination. They rushed to the door without hesitation, ready to face any possible danger. Bang! With a resounding bang, the door was smashed open by a powerful force. The immense impact knocked the warrior behind the door unconscious, sending up a cloud of dust. Several men in crisp white suits and mysterious white masks slowly entered. CP0, Marco's sharp eyes recognized the newcomers instantly, and his voice was deep and serious. Chapter 350 CP0. Pigeon Man. Luffy's eyes widened. When he saw the familiar pigeon standing on Lucci's shoulder, he instantly recognized the opponent who had once put him in a difficult battle. His face was full of vigilance and seriousness. 2 years have passed, and you're still so annoying, Straw Hat, Lucci said as he slowly took off the white mask on his face. As he did so, the other agents also took off their masks, revealing their true faces. They were Rob Lucci, Kaku, Califa, and Bruno. Are you here to fight? Seeing these old rivals, Zoro's hand unconsciously rested on the hilt of his sword, and he instantly entered a state of combat readiness. The other members of the Straw Hat Pirates also confronted the CP0. As much as I want to kill you, I have another mission this time, Lucci said as he walked into the room with steady steps. His eyes casually scanned the room. When he saw the remnants of Wano, his eyes were filled with disdain, and he snorted coldly, "A bunch of scum, what did you say?" The Wano warriors were instantly furious upon hearing this. As protectors of Wano, they possessed dignity and pride. How could they tolerate such an insult? They drew their swords, the gleaming blades gleaming coldly in the light, demonstrating their anger and determination. You're not here just to provoke, are you? Seeing this, Marco hurriedly stepped forward, standing between the two. His brow furrowed, his gaze fixed on Lucci, trying to discern their true purpose from his expression and words. After all, The sudden appearance of CP0 was definitely not that simple. Lucci curled his lips in dissatisfaction, a hint of impatience on his face, but he still began to explain. It turns out that ever since Weiss took control of Wano Country, she has stopped selling Seastone. Seastone is a vital strategic resource for the world government, essential for combating devil fruit users and for many other purposes. The world government repeatedly sent envoys to Wano Country to negotiate with Weiss, but none of them returned. Enraged by these repeated provocations, the world government first dispatched agents from other CP organizations to sabotage Wano Country and force Weiss to compromise. However, upon entering Wano Country, these agents were discovered and annihilated, unable to stir up any trouble. It wasn't until the SCP-0 unit was dispatched that they finally managed to gather some useful intelligence. As Lucci spoke, he removed his coat, revealing his muscular upper body, his toned muscles demonstrating his immense strength. However, what caught everyone's attention at that moment was a long, horrifying scar that ran from his left shoulder across his torso. What's this? Someone couldn't help but wonder. Lucci instinctively reached out to touch the wound, a subtle flicker of fear in his eyes. He slowly said, I infiltrated a castle tower to assassinate Wes Erwin, and was wounded by a sword. A sword? The Straw Hat Pirates gasped at this. They had witnessed Lucci's strength before, and it must have increased significantly over the past 2 years. They hadn't expected such a formidable opponent to be so severely injured by a single sword strike. The attacker must have been incredibly powerful. If my devil fruit hadn't awakened, and Bruno hadn't activated the door fruit in time to help me escape, I would have been dead. Lucci recalled the scene, still feeling a lingering fear. The feeling of being on the verge of death still lingered in his mind. There's no chance of winning with these losers. Lucci glanced at everyone present. Though the words were harsh, everyone understood the reality of the situation. With their current strength, trying to fight Weiss alone would be like trying to hide a rock with an egg. So, Lucci paused, his gaze sweeping across everyone's faces before finally speaking in a deep voice, join forces. Those two simple words stunned everyone present. So, that was the reason for Lucci's visit, an order from the 5 elders. Weiss's presence was a thorn in the 5 elders' side, leaving them feeling uneasy. He had first defeated 2 of the 4 emperors, rapidly expanding his power and slipping beyond the control of the world government. Wano Country was strategically located, making it difficult to defend and easy to attack. Furthermore, the Revolutionary Army had become increasingly active in the past 2 years, forcing the world government to dedicate a large number of troops to suppressing them. This left them with little spare resources to deal with Wano Country, so they had to resort to a surprise attack by an elite team. Although Lucci was extremely reluctant to join forces with the pirates, the orders of the 5 elders were absolute to him, and he tolerated no disobedience. So, they came straight to him. Joining forces with the world government, neither the Straw Hat Pirates nor the Whitebird Pirates had anticipated this situation. Their first instinct was to refuse. After all, the two sides had a long-standing grudge and were usually hostile. However, after careful consideration, they had to admit that, given their current strength, they were indeed at a disadvantage. If they could join forces with CP0, they might actually increase their chances of victory, even if it was just a slight chance. So, after much hesitation, they finally agreed. Thus, the two formerly hostile parties now sat down and began to cooperate. The scene seemed absurd, and one could only sigh. In the unpredictable world of pirates, anything could happen. One had to admire CP0's intelligence-gathering skills. They had a thorough understanding of the situation in Wano Country. For 2 years, Wano Country has been firmly under the control of Wes Erwin. Lucci solemnly unfolded a map, spread it flat on the table, and pointed at it. He's mastered special abilities, able to travel back and forth between Dressrosa and Wano Country in an instant. This means that dividing our forces is unwise. We must concentrate all our forces to attack this place. As Lucci spoke, he pointed his finger firmly at a spot on the map, which he had marked with a red pen. This was clearly what they considered the key. Where? Luffy's curiosity was piqued. He leaned forward, his eyes widening, wanting a closer look. Too close. Asshole. Lucci pushed Luffy's head away with disdain, his face filled with displeasure. He simply couldn't stand Luffy's loud and unruly behavior, but there was nothing he could do at the moment. After all, they still had to cooperate, so he could only suppress his dissatisfaction. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.